with everything that's going on here is the lack of documentation available when you make a public records request about inspections and things like that. It doesn't exist. In my former line of work, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. And the importance of documentation isn't just because somebody may want to look at the record. It's a history. It has a lot to do with being transparent and the integrity of a process. So if you conduct a business as a public official, that should be documented. It should be written down and made part of an official record. And every time I asked for something in regards to Arrowhead Way, it seemed that there was no record available. Going back to 2017 is the only record that I received. That's a long time. That's 8 years. Mm-hmm. It gives the impression of a lack of oversight. And that's not good, because once the public loses trust in our own government, in the way that the plan works, the way that our government works, how are we supposed to come in here and trust that you guys are going to do what you need to do for us? When we have a problem and we come to you as residents of the town or just concerned citizens, that there is a process, a process that's logical, a process that's documented, that's verifiable. This is the reason that I've been so upset about the entire process, because when I ask for records, I'm told they exist, but then they're not in an archive, they're not provided. For example, Mr. Anderson, the last meeting, you said to me, I have those records for the bond, I'll show them to you, they're in my truck. Mm-hmm. Well, I never saw them. I'm still without the information on the bond.
Okay, and now you submitted an official request.
I did. I've submitted it twice for the same information.
And I believe at this point, Delia, you have pulled.
Yeah, I did respond, letting them know that we have physical files that, you know, if you're able to come in, you can access them in our conference room. It's just it's a lot to scan, and
yeah.
So you can come in and go through what we have. That's okay. Perfectly fine. I did respond to the town clerk. I don't know if they got back to you.
I received an email saying that they would be provided by the 10th.
Okay.
That whatever records existed would be provided by the 10th.
So I did respond a couple days ago, letting them know that we have physical files available. It's perfectly fine on my end to make them available in the conference room, and you can go through them.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
There was a mention of the DCR last night. Is that part of the record as well?
Yeah, and I think this is a place where I'd like Kevin to explain, because it was a new one on me, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay. So that subdivision was pretty well held off for quite a while before he went back up there and started working on it again.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that's why there was such a vacancy of anything done about it.
Between 2019, 2023, I didn't have any water runoff coming over the hill, nothing at all. It wasn't until they started cutting the road that the water started coming down. And if you all have accessed the information that I gave you, you'll see that it started very early. I made contact with Mr. Blair. I showed him photographs. He came to visit the site. He admitted it was his fault. He said he would fix it. And then over the course of the next 2 years, it was a whole lot of promises and no action until this major storm, where obviously you've all toured the site. You saw the amount of damage that came over there. The Conservation Commission felt it was important enough to issue a violation letter. And I'm hoping that we still have the ability to hold people accountable when they make mistakes. Maybe it wasn't done purposely. I don't think it was. It's just not done well. And as a result, this is what we end up with.
Through the chair, I know I was on the board when the road was being put in, and I remember seeing the reports that Kevin put together on basic checks. What's the word I'm looking for, Kevin? The base
road construction.
And also,
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, we had a man monitoring construction at that time. We have complete records. All of that is done. I can't attest to where the records are in town, but my company has all the records. We've been requested to produce it, and it's all going to be provided. We had a man monitoring construction the entire time.
So, Kevin.
I was requested to go to take a look at 140 Pommogusset Road. I went with Norm June 3rd. We took a look. No doubt about it. This citizen's property has had inundation of water The water comes in the back of the lot, washes down, it's a very steep cut slope in the back of these lots. When the water comes over that, it goes down, it creates erosion gullies, if you will, down the face of that. There's sediment on the property because as you erode, it eats away the gravel and sand. That now gets deposited on the citizens' property. All over the place on the property, there was evidence of intensive incoming water. Mr. Rosario sent me videos showing the water coming in the backyard, and there's a very substantial flow of water coming in. And when the steepness of that embankment and back is important, because when the water comes in, first of all, the slope between Pommogusset Road and Arrowhead is very, very steep. The natural existing slope, extremely steep. These lots were cut into the hill, and the back of that excavated slope is extremely steep. So when this water comes down, it's gonna accelerate, and that creates, the water flows at erosive velocity.
That's what I was gonna ask Kevin.
No question that these, and we saw as we walked along Pommogusset, from the street, you could see other properties had water problems coming in from behind. Norm, I suggested to Norm, we go up and take a look at Arrowhead, just to make sure something on Arrowhead isn't amiss. The concern I had was, in subdivision construction, when you have first of all, the drainage system in Arrowhead is what they call a closed drainage system. The road is crowned, there's berms on both sides, so the drainage in the asphalt drains to the gutter, and the gutter flows to a catch basin. In theory and in practice, all the water in that road is collected to drains, goes. A key aspect of that is that the culvert, the drainage culvert in Arrowhead, goes all the way around Arrowhead onto Grizzly Drive and down to what's called the Molten Pond Dissipator. That was reviewed by DCR. It's in watershed protection, the Cohen Bill, Watershed Protection Act. So DCR has complete authority there. So my office did not review DCR's review. DCR took responsibility for that molten pond dissipator. But the key to that is that all the runoff that's collected in Arrowhead goes into a pipe that goes all the way around and 1,000 feet east. None of the runoff collected in Arrowhead goes in the direction of Pommogusset or Brintnal. Now, I say that, but there's one concern I had that Norm and I talked about and looked at. In subdivision construction, when a builder creates a driveway, they have to cut the berm to allow the driveway in. Now, if the lot is higher than the road, the driveway goes up, doesn't matter. The water in the street is not gonna flow up the hill. But when the lot is lower than the road, the concern exists that opening that curb could allow that gutter flow to flow down that driveway. The answer to that is to put in an apron, a paved apron, all right? Now, and Norm and I went up on June 3rd and examined, there was 3 lots in particular I was concerned about because they're low lots, they're directly above these folks' properties, okay? All of those lots had aprons installed, but I spoke to Blair Development and said, you gotta make them even bigger just to ensure that there's no possible way that water is flowing from the street into that. Now, so, and at this point, those aprons have been installed, and I think under all but the most severe storms, they're gonna function. They're not gonna allow water to flow toward these folks' homes. Now, key to this also is the idea that there's a giant division line in subdivision construction. When a developer builds a road, that's the town's responsibility. It comes under the subdivision control law. It's dictated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Planning boards have to review and monitor and review the design, monitor construction, and for the town's sake, make sure that the construction is done properly. That did take place, but the division here is that private lots, each lot on a subdivision is private development. As I read the bylaw, and I think it's been agreed that you do not have the ability to review or control construction on individual lots, including these folks' lots. So what takes place on private lots, this board doesn't have either responsibility or authority to control. I know this board is very concerned and wants to be helpful any way it can, and will do whatever they can to improve the situation. But ultimately, the zoning bylaw does not grant the board the authority to step in and force somebody to do something. But that doesn't mean these folks don't have recourse. When a builder builds a lot, he has a responsibility to construct a lot in a way that protects. I'm sorry, let me back up. I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer. My opinion is that a builder has a responsibility when they build a lot to anticipate reasonable circumstances that need to be protected, anticipate and build accordingly. In this case, from the street, I didn't see anything on those lots, but I understand that Blair Development built some sort of a swale behind these homes that goes over to Brintnal. I've not seen this. I don't have any, I don't have any authority or ability to go there and look at it, but there is, I understand, a swale. I'm told that that swale has been surcharged, that water coming from those lots on Arrowhead has flown down, has drained down into that swale and overcharged it. Water coming to Mr. Rosario's property, I'm told, overflowed that swale. So whatever was done may not be sufficient, but I'm in no position to comment on that other than to say the observed conditions here would suggest that that's true. I will say one other thing, is that the nature of storms that we see now are very high intensity and relatively short duration storms. This is the month, this is the weather. Long, humid days, severe thunderstorms at the end of the day with intensive downpours. That's the stuff that will cause these folks to receive runoff. That's the stuff, because you have a steep natural slope and a steep embankment at the rear of these properties. That's the term engineers use is flashy. It'll reach peak flow rapidly and it will discharge very aggressively. So I think what these folks are seeing is undeniably an issue. I would submit that it's a civil matter. Again, I'm not town council. Maybe the planning board would care to talk to town council, but the builder of these lots should be addressing this. Now, I did call Clee Blair, and said, this is what I think. And I went through what I've just told you. And I said, I believe the issue is between these folks and you, and not the planning board. The planning board doesn't have a role or authority directly in this. He agrees. These folks should be talking to the builder of these lots and persuading him to improve whatever he did.
I tried. 2 years I tried. The last comment he made was, he wasn't fixing anything. That was his comment. This is the reason I came to the planning board, and it was simply because after 2 years of patience, photographs, conversations, which I supplied very clearly, I was never rude. I didn't expect anything extravagant.
I know. These neighbors have nothing but civil, decent people, and they have honest concerns. There's not any question about that, and there's no question that their properties are being impacted here. And I think the planning board may wish to confer or talk to the developer and encourage him to make this right. I think that the runoff conditions that they've seen here are exacerbated by the lot development on Arrowhead. Arrowhead itself, it's very clear, and I'm happy to show that I can show anybody who wants to see it. The drainage collected in Arrowhead Way goes all the way the other side of that hill. All of the runoff collected in Arrowhead Way goes on the other side to Grizzly Drive and to the Molten Pond dissipator. So none of the runoff collected from the street ends up in these folks' properties.
Kevin, can I ask you a question? This is something that I personally dealt with Lenny, with the cul-de-sac behind me, Carlson Way. Mm-hmm. Maybe you guys didn't observe that, because it's impermeable surface with the roofs. I don't know, and I don't remember if those houses have gutters. If they do,
Not all.
not all. The whole house drainage, which is around the foundations, where does that go?
Right
That
to the
would-
surface. Unless they put in dry wells
Yes.
stormwater recharge systems, that water goes to the surface. And
Yeah.
the lots on Arrowhead, the driveways are steep, and the entire lots, the runoff is directed directly toward these folks' properties. There's
That's what I
no
was getting
question
at.
about it.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because what Len had did for the people that I live around is we were worried about I call it the beaver pond, of rising because of all of that runoff from impermeable surfaces. And you're correct, the stormwater around there came to a stormwater and was moved away. But because of so many roofs, Len actually took all the whole house drains and the gutters and fed them out to the front to basically keeping it from going to the back, like would be, in your case, running down the back side. But again, that was during construction.
Yep.
And we were ahead of the game. You guys are right now
And I don't know on Arrowhead if the roof drains are not located below the level of the drainage system in Arrowhead. Because those houses, those lots and houses are substantially lower than the street. And I'm guessing here, but I'm pretty sure that the outlets of those downspouts is below the drain elevation.
And there goes your velocity with the
Because
water.
I think I told Norm, they'd have to come up about 3 feet and then
Yes, to
taper it
get
off.
it back into the street drainage system,
Exactly.
yes.
Okay. It was just, I wanted to make that point because that was what we were fearful of, and we sort of, that's what I'm looking for, headed it off before it happened. You guys are 5 years past that because your houses are built and now they're building up there, so.
I have a quick question. I know that Mr. Anderson spoke with Clea as well. And I know that was a private conversation, but as a public official acting on an official business or talking to him about this particular problem and trying to encourage him to do the right thing, was that memorialized, that conversation? Because I know you told me in the hallway afterwards what he said.
No.
You know, I mean, this person has no interest in helping us. And he made that clear to Mr. Anderson and he made it clear to me. This is the only reason I came. When I retired from the police department, I moved to Rutland to live a quiet life. I didn't want anybody to know my name. I wanted to disappear. Okay? However, and I've had it's wonderful living in the town. I really like it. But I would say that, having to come to these public meetings, making a big deal about it, having people know my name, not something I wanted to do. I don't want to put my address out there for everybody to know where I live.
Do we know what the response was? I mean, if we're speaking about potentially asking him through town council, do we know what his response was?
His response was he's not gonna do anything about it. There's a 0% chance he's gonna do anything about it. That was the official response. And so I ask only because if I was sitting in an official capacity, operating in my official capacity as a whatever, I would have to memorialize that conversation. I would have to write it down so that people who came in the future would be able to look back and verify what I did, what I said, what the outcome was. When things aren't written down, when things aren't submitted, when there's no record of a conversation, how is anyone in the future gonna be able to make an informed decision and hold people to account for the things that they say? To be told that he plans to do nothing is, it's like, this is the reason that we're here.
Anyway,
Is there no bylaw about keeping water runoff on a piece of property? So you can build roofs and driveways and ship all that water to somebody else?
Yes,
It's a
yes.
law.
You can do that here.
Everywhere in America you can, and there's a reason for that. A builder, when they submit a project for review, one of the things we look at is hydrology. We have to show not that the project won't allow water to flow downhill, but that it doesn't increase the rate at which water flows downhill. The explanation for that, if you have a minute, I can explain it in a way that we can understand. Imagine a hill, 10,000 years ago. Rain fell, water ran down the hill. 100 years ago, Jones builds a house at the bottom of the hill. Jones receives water because for 10,000 years, clouds have formed, rain has fallen, water comes down the hill to Jones's property. Smith builds a house above Jones. Smith's job is not to prevent Jones from ever getting runoff. Smith's job is to not increase the water that comes to Jones's property. So the idea is that you have to show, and it's a complicated science that engineers spend a lot of time doing, hydrology studies, and all of those reports that the board gets are pre-construction and post-construction, pre-development and post-development. You compare pre to post and document to the board that the development will not increase the rate of runoff as a result of that project being built. Ways we control it, detention ponds, other,
Storm scepters.
storm scepters, putting water, roof water into chambers, put it away, it's good for the groundwater, it tucks some of that water in a different location. But the idea that I'm supposed to get no runoff from the guy upstream of me is not totally accurate. if
Not
that's
no
something.
runoff, but when you create impervious surfaces like roofs and driveways, you are increasing the runoff.
Absolutely correct, absolutely correct.
Is there anything in our bylaws or state law that forces the builder of the thing uphill to not increase that runoff?
There is, if I may, again, I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer, but civil claims abound. I've given testimony in Superior Court on hydrology. Many's the citizen who's harmed by somebody upstream, or in this case, maybe by someone who didn't do their job properly and is receiving water that they shouldn't have to receive, or is dispersing water to somebody at a greater rate than happened before. It's a civil matter. I'm aware of nothing in your zoning bylaw that says you have the right or the requirement to review that. You do that in a subdivision application because you have complete authority over that, and you have provisions in subdivision development work to control that.
For the road.
For the road, for the subdivision infrastructure, exactly
Correct.
correct. Yep.
But
That's what I
not,
wanted.
but not for the lots?
Correct. Lots are a separate entity in the eyes of the bylaw, and the bylaw doesn't give the planning board, as I read it, the bylaw doesn't give the planning board responsibility or authority even to intervene or prohibit, or even if a person in the town wants to build a house, they hire a builder. The builder goes to the building inspector. And if you have to have a septic system, they have to go to the Board of Health. If you're within 100 feet of a wetland, you have to go to the Conservation Commission to get a building permit. But there's nothing, the building inspector, there's no requirement that person submit anything to this board, except under certain circumstances, like special permits. And there's certain provisions in the bylaw under certain conditions that site plan approval or review is required. But it's specific to those uses, not to single-family home construction, as I read the bylaw.
So
Again.
can we make a bylaw for that? And that's what you were talking about before, Norm?
That's kind of what yes.
And what about the building inspector? He can issue a permit and allow runoff from the home downstream?
I had a good chat with our present building inspector, who, at least, I don't know if I have no reason to not believe him. It sounds like he has had the world of experience in terms of, being a building inspector and building permits and that sort of thing. And one of the questions that I had from him, and I was really surprised, was if he gets an application for a building permit, does he go out and take a look at the lot to see whether it's appropriate for the lot? He cannot do it. He's not allowed to.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all, but he's not allowed to. His first inspection is when the foundation is put in. That's his first look at a building lot.
So when is the bylaw committee going to meet to address this?
We've got to do a lot of research, first of all. We have a line, as a matter of fact, Kevin Quinn sent me a bylaw by the city of Worcester that looks like it may be a starting point to fit our bill. I haven't had a chance to completely look at it because I'm sure that that site plan bylaw they have affects a lot of other bylaws that they may have as well, and that sort of thing. I don't know if it contains, at this point, any limits as far as like allowable slopes and that sort of thing. We're just getting started on it.
Norm, to not interrupt, but that's for the city of Worcester. We'll have to curtail that
Well-
because that's covering an entire city we'll have to make it specific to Rutland, so yes,
This is a
there's
thing.
gonna be some work in it.
Yeah, because, and I don't know, you know, a city may have more powers than the town does in controlling that, so I don't know.
Some towns do have site plan review requirements for. Paxton has a similar one to the city. If any lot that slopes at more than 15% must be submitted for site plan review.
Wow.
Yeah, any lot, 15% is pretty, that means probably 75% of the development done goes to site plan review.
And future development in Rutland, the way it is, would definitely fall into that.
Yes, yeah.
Now, when you're creating the road over which we have jurisdiction, and in that case, you're cutting into the hillside and then you're moving that dirt to create the lots, thereby affecting the slope behind it, does that allow us some sort of connection because it's connected to making the road, or is that still completely separate?
It's a good question. Subdivisions, including Bear Hill 2, have an easement. And what happens is, like, for example, if the road is filled, you have to fill a fill slope out, and those fill slopes will extend onto private property. So typically you have an easement for the grading, a grading easement is called, that provides that site development cannot encroach into that grade slope for the stability of the road. Likewise, if the road is cut into a hill, you have a cut slope at 3:1 or something like that, it goes outside of the right of way, if you will, outside the road property. But there's an easement that says that the private developer can do things on that, but he can't encroach within that. He can't destabilize that slope.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
I can show you on a plan if it's helpful to you.
Please, yeah.
Yep.
Kevin, that's like in the city, the 10-foot easements around roads, that's basically protecting any changes or anything like that to the road.
Could be. Sometimes it's utilities too.
Yeah, it's what's where I'm used to is the utility side. But I've seen the cuts in Worcester where some of the roads are cut up and then it flattens off and that's where the development starts.
Right.
It's literally on the other side of the sidewalk is what it ends up being.
Yep.
So,
I have a question for Mr. Quinn, if I may. You've had experience with the code enforcement department in the city of Worcester before?
Sure.
Why don't we have a code enforcement here?
You do.
We do?
Building inspector.
But he said he can't do anything. I spoke to him as well. He told me he does not have the authority to issue citations or to hold developers accountable when they make mistakes.
That's where town council ought to come in.
Yeah, possibly.
I heard the same thing when I emailed him after our last meeting.
I'm sure the city of Worcester grants that code enforcement guy, gentleman, woman,
It's this whole department.
grant high, a high breadth of,
40.
Yeah,
what
they
they
can
can do,
actually
which
put a
is-
stop order in and
Yeah.
they have to stop.
They can, but they have to be able to cite where that,
the reasons.
where they're deviating from the code or the whatever. If you have an approved plan, you deviate from the approved plan, that's good enough.
Yeah.
But they still have to have, they can't just walk onto a site and say, you're causing a problem, especially with runoff. It's tricky, and certainly you'd need to be careful an inspector would need to be very careful.
And Kevin, if I'm not mistaken, the code enforcement from the board and from them would be on the plan for the road and its infrastructure around it. When it gets to the housing development, that's outside the board's.
Right. That's right, the building inspector is the zoning enforcement officer and state building code. And obviously that comes along with plumbing codes, electrical codes, all that stuff, but that's where his authority derives.
I just wanted to put that out there that there's a, if you wanna call it scope break between the road and the actual building of the house. Different codes, different,
The building inspector would walk onto any subdivision road, say, this is not my authority. Likewise, if I go onto a site and it's controlled by state building code, that's outside of my.
the point being, Norm, is that if something was found, like I know you've done in the past for us, Kevin, done a report saying, listen, the road's collapsing here, it needs to be repaired. The planning board can go to the developer and say, fix this. If he doesn't, then the next step is to write a letter to the code enforcement and have something done about it.
Yes.
That's typically the process, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Okay.
So for example, if there were a subdivision that were not completed, and the building inspector's having problems with lots. Well, I'm not sure, he's gotta be careful, but they can use the subdivision development, impede subdivision development as an enforcement, tool. But it's a little bit, again, it's tricky because a private site comes into a public road, there's some issues there. But a builder asking the town to accept a road, just a thought.
So, yeah, I don't know, it's been my experience, and I guess it's just a personal observation, having seen many building inspectors, this combination, building inspector, zoning enforcement officer, it seems by and large, most building inspectors, they love inspecting buildings, and they really don't like doing zoning enforcement at all. That's just been over at least 4 or 5 building inspectors we've had.
Yeah,
It's been-
I'm betting dollars to donuts, Worcester has a complete different department between enforcement
Oh.
and
I'm sure
building
they pay
inspectors.
him a lot too, I'm sure.
And again, I'm not trying to compare Rutland to Worcester, please don't take it that
I
way.
understand.
I'm just saying that there's a whole person involved as opposed to in Rutland, unfortunately, we have one, if I'm not mistaken, Harold, that has to do both jobs.
Yeah.
So,
Just from my experience, I don't understand why the slope in his backyard doesn't fall under state building code enforcement of greater than whatever slope. So that would fall into building department here is what I see.
I don't.
Dave,
If I may,
give me your name and address so we get you in the record.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the state building code pertains to everything within 10 feet of the building. Building code doesn't pertain to site development. I wish it did, but it doesn't. It's strictly building code. So if there's a retaining wall that's taller than 4 feet, that comes under the state building code. So a retaining wall on a site could be controlled by the state building code. But grading, driveways, front yard, backyard, all of that is outside of state building code enforcement.
Just a quick question, is there riprap in the base of those scoured channels? Or does it go to dirt and dirt forever?
Dirt and dirt forever. I
Okay.
saw no riprap. Riprap, we wouldn't be talking.
Yeah.
Or we might be having a different conversation, but the erosion,
Yeah.
riprap is the armor that prevents a slope from being eroded by severe runoff. These lots, if that slope was armored with riprap, they wouldn't have the erosion problems, but they'd still be receiving
The same amount of
a lot of water.
Yeah,
But I think the issue with the slope is not that it wasn't protected, it's that it's receiving water that it shouldn't ever receive.
too strong,
That-
too
that's-
fast, yeah.
That's my opinion, but. Sure.
It was one of the solutions that I had asked Mr. Blair about, if he would consider putting in some type of channel to make at least the water, make it smoother. At least it would come down, least resistance and channel off into one area. I never got a
Channel
response.
off to a storm drain?
Yeah, that would be nice. And not over the driveway and not bringing, 70-pound rocks down the hill onto the driveway. I mean, I still have 2.5 feet of soil, rock and soot up against the back of my shed. I mean, this was unbelievable. I never saw anything like it, and you've all seen the video. And I'm beginning to understand here, this is what I'm looking for, a clear picture, that this is probably gonna end up in civil court. And so, to get a non-response from the developer, even though the town has gone to him and said, there's obviously a problem. Mr. Quinn is an expert in this field, and he can see that there's a problem. And to get a non-response is pretty clear that we're gonna have to go through court for this. I was hoping that maybe someone here would have some influence and at least get in his ear and say, hey, this is the right thing to do, make it right.
That's what I was about to bring up. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks. I think it would be appropriate for the planning board to send I'm gonna call it a strongly worded letter to Mr. Blair about the situation. And the best we can do is request that he take some action to correct it.
And Norm, I'd like to add, I just was saying to Dick quietly, this somewhat similar situation you and I had seen over Bryce Lemon. Where, remember that, it was coming off of high area. It wasn't a hill, but it was
Spring
a,
fed.
yeah, and it was feeling down, and he came in, put a swale in with riprap and ran it between the properties, basically the easement, to a storm drain out on the road.
Yep.
That solved the problem.
Yep.
Why is
Three,
he willing to do it for us?
I'm just saying, that's what I would like to see in our letter to him. We've got an example of something you did before over in Bryce Lemon. We strongly suggest that that type of solution be handled on Pommogusset from the water coming down from Arrowhead, maybe. I'm not the expert in writing letters.
Who's in charge of the drainage off the roof?
It's not building code, it's not.
It's not planning board, it's not.
We pay fees now for all the water, your stormwater management.
Yeah, but that doesn't
Every
have,
home pays into, so they're, my guess is they're claiming it's yours. It's your water,
Yeah.
It's maybe not something I agree with, but,
It's coming though, that's gonna be everywhere. Every community is
we need
gonna
to
have
adopt it.
a stormwater authority before long, and it'll probably be DPW, a branch of DPW.
It is now.
I can tell you what I did. I had the same problem. I had a neighbor that was next to me that when my house was built and Mr. Elbag and Mr. Susi built a hell of a good house and great drainage, this individual built a large garage / shed literally with one of his support posts facing my whole house drain. And so what ended up happening is over time, that water came out of there and it used to go in a, what's it called, gully trough that would go down and away from the house and distribute in the property. Well, due to the fact that that now had another place to go because it was dug out, it started to sink. And being the good neighbor that I was, I built what Kevin was saying, a dry well and piped that all away. But again, that was all on me. I couldn't go to the town, I couldn't do anything like that because it was all private. What Gene was saying, impermeable surface that water was coming off of. It didn't affect anybody for 25 years or 20 years. Then all of a sudden a garage was built, now it does. So that's something that might have to be discussed with the people up top. I don't know, I mean, that, again, it's all personal. And like Kevin said, civil.
I agree with the idea of sending a letter. I don't know how much good it'll do, but with this developer specifically, all the issues at Bryce Lemon, and the overall tenor that developer has when dealing with the town, I think we need to be as forceful as we possibly can.
If I may, Mr. Anderson to Mr. Quinn, have you found that the plans that Blair had submitted and were approved, are they the same as what his actual work is?
Did they build according to plan?
Correct.
Yeah, on Arrowhead, yes. I mean, I just did a review, they're seeking acceptance of Arrowhead currently. So I did a final punch list of issues, yeah, they built substantially according to plan.
I'm sorry, can you explain what that is, something of acceptance? I'm
Yeah.
not familiar with what that
What it is a developer proposes to build a road. And he submits plans to the planning board reviews it, there's a protracted process of review, criticism, submissions, revisions, things like that comes to an agreement. The subdivision plan is approved. They build that road, and the entire time they're building the road, they own it. The town monitors construction, follows what's going on, and maintains ongoing records of the construction of the road. But the road is owned by the developer. At some point, and when he's at a certain level of completion, he can begin building lots off of it. The road is not completed, but he can build the lots. That's what's taken place on Arrowhead. Arrowhead was substantially finalized probably 4 or 5 years ago. They then went forward with building the lots. Now they've gone back and the lots are all built out. They're gonna finalize the road, they final paved it, they do everything, plant the trees, all that final stuff. That's the final inspection stage right now. And then we recommend to the board, yeah, the plan has been completed, substantially in conformance, blah, blah, blah. The board then makes a recommendation, I believe, to the select board. The select board moves to have that road accepted by the town. And at town meeting, they vote to accept it. Once that road is accepted, the town owns and maintains that road. So the pavement, repaving, restoration, repairs, anything that takes place is done by the town. So it's not the developer has done his job, it's been accepted by the town, it is now owned and operated by the town.
Thank
If
you,
the-
Mr. Quinn.
If the town accepts the road, does liability transfer as well?
Yeah, that's a legal question that I'm
Yeah.
way over my depth on. But
Murphy versus Chatham.
many,
If the
yes,
town accepts the road, under the circumstances, knowing that the developer has said he doesn't intend to fix it, the town then owns the liability. And if we move forward as a neighborhood and file a lawsuit, it will have to be versus Rutland, Massachusetts, and I'd hate to do that. This individual is responsible for the mess he created, and this board needs to do everything in its power to try to get him to do the right thing, especially if he's done it before.
It's not
but the courts will see that road construction, that subdivision construction is completely separate from the lot construction.
I agree.
And that's where the line is drawn that you need to be clear of, but.
And through the chair, I would say not only, because the road acceptance also ultimately is put on a warrant article by the select board. So my suggestion is not only the planning board, but the select board, you keep in the loop of what's going on. That's my opinion. Sorry, Kevin, if I took away your thunder.
No, it's,
And I believe we have a select board member here tonight, so
do.
you're hearing this.
I'm here as a citizen,
You
not
are?
a select board, but I'm listening, so,
Awesome.
okay.
Thank you, Harry.
Does the planning board have the obligation to recommend accepting every road just because it's built to specs? Or can the planning board say, no?
My take is if it's been found that the road has been built strictly according to the subdivision standards, we would be very seriously liable if we did not.
Mass general law dictates that if you can't identify physical deficiencies in the road construction, you can't impede it. Ultimately, there's the obligations on the town to accept the road if it's been built correctly.
That's the as-built plan that we put in, cause they can do deviations during construction. And if they're minor, they go on an as-built plan that Kevin would review and put before the town. Now,
I mean, likewise, this board gets subdivision plans all the time that you may not like. You may not favor it, you may not want it to happen. But if it's submitted in accordance with your rules and regulations, the board is obliged to show what's wrong with it or accept or approve the plan. You don't have the ability to say, we just don't like this. It doesn't.
What about a pattern of past behavior? I mean, if somebody has a horrible credit score, you're not gonna give them a loan.
No, I know. I would say I don't think the courts recognize it, but that's not my call. I
Well,
would say,
obviously, yeah.
I would say that the courts are full of towns that have tried to do that. I don't know if if they're able to or not, but that's the stuff of.
the other thing for
I
the
need to
board.
find out.
The board has negotiating power. A perfect example is over on Edith Lane, where that was gonna be a subdivision, it was gonna be a one-way street. We worked with that developer, which wasn't Blair Development, was another individual,
I think it's
to ne-
submitted like 5-6
Yeah.
plans.
to negotiate of what would be the best for the town, and we gave opinions. Ultimately, Kevin's right, they could have said, no, we don't care, this is what you're getting, it falls within the regs. But they were more applicable to negotiate with the board to get a good subdivision that would be accepted by the town. And I think that's where you've got a little bit of leeway. You don't have any
Oh, yeah.
authority, but you got
Oh, yeah.
leeway to negotiate.
Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to put out there, so.
Yes.
Sorry, another one. Who designs the shape of the lots?
The builder.
And who approves the shape of the lots?
There's a lot count, isn't there?
Well, let's put it, the planning board has control over the size and frontage of lots, that's in our zoning. So when he submits a subdivision plan, each lot has to have the appropriate frontage and the appropriate area. But
So
that's all.
there are a couple of lots, I'm looking at the assessor's map, that have a piece of frontage on Cleveland Circle, a bunch of frontage on Pommogusset, and then run along the back of all those lots on Arrowhead. So there are two pieces of property,
Yeah.
and there's two lots like that, the other one has
It's called the
different.
Julian lot.
They have these skinny pieces, so behind these folks, before you get to the property on Arrowhead, are, I don't know, 25 feet wide swaths or of somebody else. So to put in riprap, you're gonna be crossing those properties.
State lots.
That
It's a-
was,
It's a bizarre shaped lot.
Yeah.
to answer Gene's question, if I'm not mistaken, when those A&Rs built, that was before we made the edict of illusionary frontage.
Mhm.
Because what happened, Gene, there was a lot of lots in Rutland that, they'd have frontage on two different roads. And so what the planning board did is, and this is something I'm gonna talk to Delia about, if Alex doesn't have it, get him. Deval Patrick came out with a phenomenal, I call it the primer for A&Rs. And it had all of the case law in there about illusionary frontage, things that you can actually deny based upon case law and A&R on. And one of them was that, and Norm had put out a letter to all developers that if there's a potential illusionary frontage, the planning board's sending it to KP to be reviewed, if it is illusionary frontage, which gives us the ability to deny that A&R. So I see what you're saying, and it's out there, I know it's out there, but moving forward from that date, the planning board, from at least when I was on it, we tried to eliminate any more of those lots that had illusionary frontage.
Just observing this, it seems like it will be even harder to get anything done because they're crossing properties.
You can do
I
easements.
believe there are two lots that actually have their driveways off of Bear Hill 2, but their frontage is on Pommogusset.
Yes. Those are the ones that
But then
slope
there's
down.
these other ones that go all the way
To Brintnal,
to, there's a road that doesn't have a name. I don't know what it is,
is that the driveway for the two or three houses off of
but, and their
Brintnal?
address is Brintnal. But they don't go to Brintnal, so I'm not really sure why that's their address. They go to what looks like a road off of Arrowhead, but I don't see the road.
There are 3 houses there that come off of Brintnal up onto a high hill, and they're right off the end of Arrowhead there.
Yeah.
That could be what that is.
And that used to be Bear Hill Road that went all the way up to Mr. Michelonis's and Mr. Helly's property. But it was cut off at Arrowhead, and then there was just the driveways, if I remember right.
Okay,
Mr. Anderson, if I may ask,
Yeah.
it appears that we have identified that the specific builder is causing multiple issues with this town. Some he has remedied, some he has not. What power and what plans do the planning board have moving forward when this developer says to you, I would like to make 20 houses in this piece of land? And where other established residents, which could be any of us in this crowd, or could be one of you guys, where you guys may have the same issue that we're having.
That's hard because
I don't have a good answer for you other than he has to submit a subdivision plan. It will be thoroughly reviewed for compliance with our subdivision regulations. If there is wetland issues, it will have to be reviewed by Conservation Commission, or possibly, as was in this case, DCR even, in some cases. But beyond that, I can't answer anything more.
Would the board be willing to go to the bylaws committee to submit brainstorm new laws to protect our town?
Bylaw, it would be under the zoning bylaw, which would be under the planning board.
So it's under you guys.
Correct.
So would this board be willing to establish new laws?
That's just what I was talking about earlier.
Will this board be willing to establish new laws?
Yes, if we find that it's going to be useful to the town, yes.
Thank you.
just say, for my opinion anyways, we have another subdivision that hasn't been started yet. And we were concerned way back, and in special conditions, you only can do 3 lots, I believe, at a time.
150 feet of.
And that was it, yes, because of the steepness. And to me, I think that's an excellent idea, and that's something that will I think this committee and subcommittee will move ahead on. It's gonna take a little time to come up with the right language. And,
Yes, definitely.
yeah,
This is,
And then the bylaws, typically, just to give you a quick synopsis, the bylaw subcommittee usually gets a bylaw recommended to them from the planning board. That group then goes through, beats it up, talks to it, if need be, gets our engineer involved if we got questions, comes up with a good piece of bylaw, zoning bylaw, I should add that in, I should say that, because there's a bylaw and there's a zoning bylaw. And then once that's done, it's sent back to the planning board to be reviewed and see if they have any input. And then at that time, it's forwarded on to the select board to be put onto a warrant article. Okay, there's a law review in the middle of it too, but ultimately it would go to the select board to be put on as a warrant article to be approved by the town. All zoning has to be approved by town.
Would this be an amendment to the bylaw or to the subdivision rules or site plan rules?
for what little I know of it right now, I think it will have to be a separate bylaw. Because,
zoning bylaw.
because among other things, in at least the way, for example, the city of Worcester reads this, okay, that site plan review is for every single building project, every single lot. So if someone has owned a house lot for 30 years, they decide they want to build a house on it, they're gonna have to come from the site plan review. You know, so it isn't even just subdivisions. It's already existing lots, it's all A and Rs.
Any development that seeks a building permit, that, the building permit is the leverage that brings that to mandates that, I guess.
So you folks are the planning board bylaw subcommittee.
Yes.
When are you going to meet to discuss this?
I don't know at this point. The best thing I can say is, number one, I know I'm gonna do a little bit more investigating. We're gonna have our new town planner do some investigating, but until we have a sufficient volume of stuff to work with, I don't know, a month, 2 months for a first meeting, something like that.
It'll take a
So it's
little,
not
it'll
gonna
take
be
a
on
little
the
while to,
fall.
you know, to get this stuff lined up.
It will definitely not be on the fall town meeting. I can guarantee you that. I would like to hope for the spring town meeting.
Is this something the board would be willing to bring up at the town meeting, that this is something the board is looking into? I've never been to a town meeting, I will be at the next one, I'm not sure if that's something that you bring up, like, these are things that we're talking about doing.
You don't do that.
Okay. You know, like a 1-year plan, 5-year plan, something along those lines.
That's, town meeting is not the place for that.
Okay, thank you.
So do you all have copies of this Worcester law?
No, I haven't disseminated it all yet.
And what about the Paxton law?
That's news to me. I didn't know.
I'll send it to you, yeah, I just mentioned that tonight, I'll send it.
I didn't know about that. We've got a ways to go on it.
It's in the
This is a
planning
brand new
board.
thing.
Yeah.
It is in the planning
The
board.
Worcester, just a snippet, it's an email. It's in there.
I have a question for Mr. Quinn. Did you have any recommendations to Blair Builders for remedies for this, other than the berm, increasing the berm or?
I did not.
No.
No, my communication with Clea was just to say, I've heard from citizens and I understand there's a lot of issues going on here. My analysis is that does not derive from Arrowhead Way. And it probably has involved the lots, it involves private construction, and that I don't believe the planning board has a role here, that it's a citizen communicating directly with the builder. He agreed that the planning board does not have a role here, and that citizens who bought property from he should be talking to him directly.
Yeah, we tried that.
Yeah, good luck. Anyway,
We tried that. So the reason I asked was because you're saying that the water that came over the hill and ripped out all that soil and rock behind my house is not as a result of Arrowhead Way.
Arrowhead Way, yes, that's not drainage from Arrowhead. Now, let me qualify that. There was evidence that there was 3 driveways, that the driveway aprons were installed, but may not have been sufficient. Under a severe storm, it's possible water came out of there. That's since been rectified. So Is it possible? Yeah, I would say some of the water could have been coming there. Did that cause the problem? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So that
And you're telling me, if
volume
you're
of
telling me
water-
you've had water in the past 3 weeks, that's subsequent to those aprons being revised.
The volume of water, you've all seen the video, but that's not.
It's huge.
That's not roof runoff or driveway runoff. That's not possible. I mean, this water ran for 10 hours. It was coming from somewhere other than someone's roof.
Waterfall.
Even those lots though are pitched away from the road down towards your house. They're not, the lawns are not healthy, and like sucking up water. So and when he made those lots, he just filled into the woods and killed a bunch of trees right there. And you can see the infill like halfway up the trees. So those aren't sucking up any water. There's a lot of compounding issues.
I'm not sure what that stone thing that he put back there is sort of intended to divert water, but I don't know if any of you, have you gone to look at it?
No.
It's certainly not well put together. Somebody
I've
rolled
walked
some
from your
rocks
house all the
in,
way up. Yes, I
threw
agree.
them back there. There's 2 feet between some stones. I mean, there's certainly not, it's not like a catch basin that's designed for water to run in and flow somewhere else. This is just a bunch of rocks buried with some dirt on top of it.
Seems more to stabilize the slope or
Yeah,
maybe like a
It certainly
makeshift
wasn't
fence.
diverting any water at all. And I'm just astounded that we would think that volume of 10 hours of runoff, that was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like that, would come off of somebody's roof. That's not possible.
Well, the aprons weren't there, or a minor apron wasn't there
Yeah.
at the time, so literally the road could have helped, you know, if they all flow into the gutter.
So then the
If
water
they
did come
breach-
from the
Even water on Arrowhead Way, that's all derived on paved surfaces. That water runs rapidly and dries immediately. So if Arrowhead Way were the source of your runoff, you wouldn't have been having runoff 10 hours later from Arrowhead Way.
Only during the storm.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Where'd it come from?
Well, that's a whole nother story too, and I
Where'd it
think
come from? The ground? It didn't come from the ground. There's no bubbling. I mean,
you really don't know. How do you know that if there might be a storm drain, then the bottom is missing or the pipe is cracked, you know, there are things that could have happened.
if that's the case, it should be inspected to see if
I
there is
guess
a crack.
my question would be,
But-
if the aprons hadn't been installed yet, which was the case up till 3 weeks ago, something like that,
Yep.
the damage that happened before that could be potentially attributed to water from the road, which is owned by Blair Builders.
Correct. The town has not accepted Arrowhead Way
Correct.
as yet anyway. That's a great point.
So he could be liable for anything that was done before that in some way.
It's a great point, yep.
Listen, I find this gentleman as difficult to deal with as you do. He works extensively on my road, and I get chicken skin just thinking about him. But like they've discussed, there's only so much we can do. I think that as a town, we need to take action individually, as well as a group, like you all are saying. And then in our bylaws, unfortunately, it will probably affect a lot of other people, but right now, this is a giant problem for our town, especially the tax implications going down the road of fixing any of these things that we might be liable for, all of that. So I think that looking at this in the bylaws, writing a letter are a step in the right direction.
The town accepting the road under the conditions that it's in, even if it was built exactly the way it was meant to be built, by plan, I mean, to the exact specifications, there is obviously a problem that has not been discovered, whatever it may be, whatever it is. It exists. So if I were to buy a company and someone were suing that company and I buy the company, I own the liability. The town, it would be irresponsible for the town to accept that road under these
Mr.
circumstances.
Chairman, if I may, through you.
Yep.
You folks are citizens. Town meeting is where this takes place.
Yeah.
Speaking up at town meeting is your right and privilege as a citizen. If you have an objection, town meeting is a great place to make your voice heard.
That's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. I object in 1,000 ways and I'll do it again at every other
I
meeting.
think he's referencing the fall meeting and the spring meeting, is that?
Well, the town meeting is where
Lots we were talking
the
about
formal
before.
acceptance of a road takes
The
place.
ones that go in
The
the
whole
back.
town votes on it, whoever
Yes.
shows
All
up
the way
that
down
day.
there.
Town meeting, yes.
It can
Not-
get
not
approved
at
by the
height of
boards,
road,
but
down
again,
there.
yeah.
And boards only
And-
recommend
and then
approval
follow.
and it goes forward to the
those
select
steps,
board. And the planning board is constrained very carefully by mass law as to what you can and can't. You can't say, we don't like this guy, so we don't wanna accept this. But at town meeting, the people are entitled to voice their concerns. And I would urge, if you have concerns to this, speak up.
If the town votes no, are we then sued? Or like you said, the planning board has to accept it if it meets the
Right.
whatever.
Anyone can file an appeal. A developer who's denied a town meeting conceivably could file an appeal. I don't frankly know how that works. I've never heard of that happening, a denial of an acceptance being appealed, but I would think they could.
At least if it's brought up at town meeting, he has apparently one very good lawyer, and we would then have 1,000 amateur lawyers Googling away, trying to figure out our side of the story.
I can't tell you, this is to Kevin, since I've lived across from that hill for 26 years, before any building happened, I was actually gonna buy property up on Bear Hill. There was Mr. Michelonis and Mr. Helly. Mr. Michelonis' property was available, which is now the driveway for those 3 houses. One of the reasons I walked away was because the velocity of the water coming off of Bear Hill would wash out that driveway every 2 years. And I couldn't see investing 10 grand every 2 years to rebuild a driveway. And that was just-
prior to the existence of.
Prior to anything, Arrowhead, that was just the hill of the velocity of water coming off of, at the time it was called Bear Hill, and that was up where they were flat at the top. The Michelonis house and the Helly house are still there, they're just pieces of them on the backside of Arrowhead. But there used to be a driveway coming all the way down that now is part of just a 3-house driveway. And that velocity was, I mean, it would wash everything out. And again, on the other side of Brintnal, there were no houses there. It was swamp. So it would just wash over Brintnal, wash it out, and the water would go down into the swamp. So in 26 years, nothing's changed with the exception of now more impermeable surfaces and houses are there. So what you're seeing for velocity, I saw 26 years ago, just in another area. We didn't have the washout back then, and I didn't have anything in my property, neither did Mr. Frost, because of all of those trees and the undergrowth there that basically, in my mind, again, I'm not an expert, I'm not a geologist, would absorb that water. That's what I saw in the past.
So the problem existed, did the town know the problem existed and still approved those
Wasn't a town road.
lots?
Wasn't it, that was a private driveway at the time, so there was no issues. They couldn't do anything about it because, and that's one of the reasons I didn't wanna buy the house, is because now I'm accepting a private driveway that's basically at the time common, and I was like, I walked away
But there was approval on the house sites.
on the A&Rs.
And if there was a study done, and I think it's with a hydrologic study, right, to study whether or not it would increase the flow of water over the hill, even if the study said, no, it won't. The video I submitted shows that it obviously did. There is definitely an increase in water. And I'm hoping that whatever remedy he tried, whatever, I forgot what you called it, Mr. Quinn, that cut in.
Apron,
I
right now,
hope that
apron.
it's certain, that it helps, I mean, that would be great. I just
Not that I
find it,
would love to see any more rain, but, like
Right.
that, but it would be nice to find out if that solved the problem, and if not, where we could walk back to try to find where,
you mentioned the possibility of some damage that's not visible on the surface, whether it be a cracked or missing or whatever it may be.
or even those 2 houses you were talking about, had the little narrow driveway she was talking about.
Yep.
What if water started from up that way, came down, not up near the higher of the houses, but the lower part, came down and then flowed down into yours?
I submitted photographs of the ends of those driveways up on Arrowhead Way that show that the water came off the driveway and focused in one area and just flowed straight down the hill, right to the back of my house.
Yeah, okay.
Those photos were submitted.
All right,
There's no way that came from the ground. It came from those driveways and off of Arrowhead Way.
all right.
Not only that, I think if you look through the conversations that I had with Mr. Blair, I actually went up and did the work for him. He said, would you mind investigating it for me? So I did. I went up and I took a whole bunch of photos. And I traced the water and the trail all the way back up to those driveways. And I sent them the pictures. I said, look, you can see that these 3 driveways, the erosion behind it is coming down, it's focused in one area, and it's coming right behind my house.
Alright. So,
He said he would fix it. That was 2 years ago.
well, let's just hope maybe this apron fix is.
Well, I think the
Yeah.
letter should, the letter should be
Oh,
sent him
absolutely.
too,
Yes.
along with a strong, and if we don't get a response within 2 weeks, our next meeting, basically saying, my thought process, and again, I'll leave it up to the board. Bring him in with Kevin and let's talk about this and try to come up with a resolution. That's my thought.
I would mention also to the board that Arrowhead, it's a long curved road. The inside of that curve, there are lots there that are all above Arrowhead Way.
Yeah.
Correct.
Prior to the existence of Arrowhead, that was all tributary area to water which would flow down toward Pommogusset. The installation of Arrowhead Way captures not just the runoff in the road, but the sites drain onto Arrowhead Way. That is all conducted away. So there's a significant reduction in tributary area of runoff toward Pommogusset as a result of Arrowhead Way.
So Helly and Michelonis's property that used to drain into it now goes into the
Drainage
water,
system.
the drainage system for the
Correct.
road.
Correct.
So it's just basically those houses that sit below Arrowhead
Yes.
that are lower than the actual road itself.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
You know, I think, Dick, you were gonna say, which we don't want, but I think we need a serious rainstorm to test it all, you know, with,
We're not gonna get that again until May. We don't get it, it was like,
I
it's
know,
like no other,
I'm
yeah.
not saying I'm a weatherman either, but you need real rain to figure this out, or we're gonna buy a pool truck and just open it up. I mean, literally.
Yeah, I know, that's one way of doing it.
We could do it that way, but you gotta have something to prove that the aprons work too. I mean, it's not good enough to just say, well, we think this'll work. I'd wanna see it work too, because if it fails, I mean, the most you can do is tell him he's gotta fix it all. But maybe he won't, because it may not, you know, and doesn't just come down to the board approving the road, but the town either accepting it or rejecting it based on what knowledge they know about a town meeting. But if those berms are not tall enough, and I'm not sure if Kevin, you're gonna stick around for that engineer report later that's coming up. I don't know if we wanna move it ahead or not. For Arrowhead, you have the report for what you want done.
Oh, yes,
What's
yes.
missing, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not sure if
yeah.
you're staying for that, but, there's plenty of things that need to be checked off that list anyway before we
Correct.
even accept it, but definitely if those, it would be tough for me to just say, let's just accept it, without any real test, you know?
Isn't the road acceptance hearing in November? Is that what you said?
No, I
He submitted paperwork and we've asked for it to
Right,
be a
yes.
4-month process,
So
but yes.
he submitted the street acceptance with the intention of having it go to the fall town meeting in November. It's the third Thursday before Thanksgiving. So the process is gonna unfold over the next couple of months where it goes through the planning board. There's a public hearing process, it goes to the select board, it gets referred back. But as Kevin said, the ultimate decision is the voters at town meeting that night. And it would not be the first time that a road has been voted down by the voters. And it did end up there was one in Bryce Lemon that the homeowners kind of rallied together and said, there's more to be done, and the voters voted it down, and then it came back at a later date and ended up being accepted. So regardless of the recommendation that the select board or the planning board makes, ultimately it's the voters, whoever comes that night, that gets to decide.
So the second time it went before, it was accepted because Mr. Blair had made the repairs that were asked of him. Okay.
Okay, I don't know, I think we've
Yeah.
talked about all we really can cover on this thing, but I would like a motion, to send a letter to Mr. Blair regarding the issues on Arrowhead.
Also move.
And I'll second.
Can I third?
Any discussion on that?
Just to go over what that letter has in it again real quick.
Well, what I would like to say is I would plan on meeting with our planner Delia to start forming something, and I would request that each planning board member submit to Delia their ideas of points of action, or whatever that should go into that letter.
Norm, I would,
For the letter with regards to the runoff and this,
Yes.
For Cleve.
okay,
I gotta tell you, not being only a partial civil mechanical, and I say partial just because of a little bit of experience, I would be looking to this gentleman to give me some suggestions of what possibly we could do. That's some bullet points, because I think Kevin's the most qualified to make that call than me.
right, and he can, and we, cause I think we should be very specific about location and that sort of thing.
But like I say, it's more just the wording is what I'm talking about,
And be prepared for him to
you know.
tell us to
You know,
go
we-
down
we-
to, and
we-
I
And I can
believe he
draft
did
it
that
and
with
send it to the
Concom.
to the planning board so you can review it
Oh, yeah.
before it's.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Well, we can't swear at them in the letter, okay, so, you know.
Can I hand deliver it?
Would it be prudent to actually ask Mr. Quinn, the expert, for his recommendation on what can be done to repair this?
I would
Before
think
you
that-
write the letter, so that you have an expert's opinion?
yes.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, well, I mean, the letter isn't gonna get written tomorrow.
Right. I get
Okay?
it, but having his knowledge, his experience,
Mhm.
his expertise, as a basis for your letter makes sense.
It makes sense. I think Mr. Quinn has to be a little bit careful
Yeah,
as well about what he might, give as advice.
Kevin, I was looking more of, based on videos, here's some recommendations. I'm not looking for you to say to do this and come up with a design, but recommendations to mitigate
yeah.
this type of water flow. That's what I'm
General
looking for.
statement, mitigation efforts are
Yeah.
something to that effect. I don't think it's appropriate for me to say you should put in a swale, because if they do a swale and it doesn't work, they're gonna say that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't, the point of this is, he has a responsibility. It's not, it's a little bit out of the planning board's jurisdiction. So I think a letter as a concerned community board to articulate to him the importance of him resolving this issue with these citizens is important.
That's why I was looking for something for mitigations.
Yep.
A mitigation solution for this, not put in a storm scepter here, bring a swale over
Right.
here.
Yes.
But this needs to be mitigated due to the velocity of the flows coming off of
Yeah.
Bear Hill.
Yep.
Into these
Bear
residents'
Hill,
property.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
So maybe we have a maybe this is like a town council, Kevin type of meeting where we talk about what's legally okay.
Yeah, it would not be a bad idea if you're gonna have town council
Mm-hmm,
advise on that.
mm-hmm.
You kind of cross on some lines that,
My concern is that a vague letter will be met with a very vague haphazard response, which means that in future we could have additional residents showing up at another meeting. You know, we've had a fourth complaint arise, so that's kind of my concern.
For what it's, did Concom send a letter to, Concom sent a letter to Blair Builders and he told Concom to lose his number, essentially. So I'm more than willing to back any sort of use of town council and Mr. Quinn, but I also don't wanna pour resources down a drain when we're just gonna be told, good for you, thanks for your input, see you later, junk mail.
Well, the reason I disagree with you, Alex, is it gives the town more, what's the word I'm looking for,
It's a
Dave?
record.
Basis for future, if there's more problems. We've stated to Blair that there's a problem here. And
Oh,
it's a
absolutely, yeah.
I'm looking, how do I say, can build a case, basically.
Right, and I think we need to document that we are displeased with his actions and all of those things.
I don't mind spending a little money to
It
build a
could-
case.
I think that this is just, I think, I agree, I see what you're saying, we should not just stop at the letter, basically is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just real quick to mention, it's not just the roadway, it is the lot dimensions and the stormwater from lots that I think need to get.
Well, I don't think I'm in a position to say what the source of the problem is.
Yeah.
I can tell you what it isn't.
Okay.
But I don't think it's the planning board's job. It's Blair's, the developer, the builder's job to protect the property from foreseeable
Yeah.
conditions.
I'm just nervous that he's gonna say, well, the road's fine, when it could be, like you said, a culmination of things, other things, but if, just to put it out there, you know, obviously you're gonna know what to do, but,
Keith, to Kevin's comment, we're sort of out of our realm of jurisdiction, we're just trying to help out
Yeah.
the citizens as a planning board. I don't, and tell me if I'm wrong, Kevin, and Norm, I don't think we have a leg to stand on with any authority here.
Good luck trying to
Yeah.
leverage
but
authority with that.
It doesn't hurt for the board to step in and say something and basically give the town some legs to stand on down the road.
And it's also evidence when we go to town council, we can say, hey, if this was hypothetical, we didn't find any issues, but there have been these issues with the process and with this developer, and then let the town decide.
There is another aspect
We don't
too.
wanna keep
There is
that on the
another
reps.
thing to consider. I'm an engineer, I'm not a lawyer. Town council could very well say, oh, well, Jones versus Smith from 1932 says you do have authority to do things like this. Maybe there is.
Case
I don't-
law somewhere.
Yes, I'm not seeing anything in your bylaw, but again, reading this from a legalistic standpoint as to who has leverage, it may make sense to have town council assist you and tell you, maybe you do have some leverage that I'm not aware of. As I say, I'm an engineer, I'm not a lawyer.
That's why I don't mind spending the money with the resources, but Delia and Norm, when you get involved, I would ask from KP that we get a land court lawyer, and we don't just get a lawyer. We need a land court lawyer.
Yeah.
Because in the past, we've just got letters coming back from us from attorneys that were just general letters, and me personally, I want a land court attorney that's gonna, like you said, Kevin, can look in and maybe there's some case law somewhere. And that's, I
Good
guess from you
point.
two, that's what I would ask to ask KP
Yeah.
do you want a land court lawyer involved in this from KP? That's it, it's all mine.
Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion on the table, I believe. All in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
I,
Okay. Well, thank you, people. I don't know what's gonna come of it, I really don't. But at least this is what we feel we can do, and it's about all we feel we can do at this point.
So it's all we're asking for, do what you can. And if at the end of it, there's nothing that can be done, then we'll handle it through the civil process. But I think that our due diligence, our responsibility was to come here first, in hopes that we don't end up in court. That it just, being a good neighbor, being a good builder, being a good human being, should be rewarded. But when you purposely ignore the people that you hurt, I think the town needs to step up and say, this can't happen, we can't let this happen under our watch. And especially if there are ways to remedy the fact that, we don't have the bylaws that we should have. This board should have some more authority than it does. A inspector or a zoning or code enforcement or whatever it is should be able to send a cease and desist letter and not be told, oh, I don't have the authority to do that. That seems strange, and I know you're gonna do all you can, and that's all we can ask.
This is the first time that something like this has really come up. And probably would have been taken care of had it been earlier in life here, but things always change. And we've gotta look forward to the future, and I believe this is the right step moving forward.
And I would suggest you make an appointment to you to get up and get whatever records you need reviewed. Cause I know they're there, cause I've seen Kevin's reports on Arrowhead Road when he was out there.
So, yeah, just to make it clear, there is no, the records that are in the town planner's office are sitting on a table waiting, you know, so, I mean, I don't wanna overstep with regards to the town clerk in terms of getting back to you, but I just wanna make it clear that I did respond. So, I don't know what happened.
But the board's telling you you can, go visit her.
I'll do that.
Okay,
Right.
okay, are we done? Yes.
Did you wanna jump, there was something else?
Yeah, I was thinking, maybe we skip down to,
7.
item 7, town engineer's report on septic, inspection. Which I believe we have copies.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
All right.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
This one,
That's,
maybe.
yeah. Yeah, fingers don't work. There. Okay. So, I don't know if there's a need for an awful lot of comment, on this. I looked it over and, these are, I guess I would say common things that you would find,
Yes.
you know, on a final inspection. And, you know, 3 or 4 of them were about either damage to the berm or berm wasn't done correctly.
Yes.
Needs to be fixed.
Yep, this is Arrowhead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Arrowhead.
Yes. Yep.
Stop sign not, stop sign and stop line not painted. What else? Station 0 to 400 embankment slope unstabilized, reading, what's on the sidewalk. I think that's on that lower entrance.
Yes, yep,
uh,
exactly.
is-
Yeah, the low stations are the, I guess would be the eastern entrance, the lower entrance going closer to Bear Hill.
Yeah, yeah. Manhole excavated, I have no idea why he had to do that.
They paved over it.
Oh, did they?
They paved over it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
so they had to dig it up.
Okay.
I'd hate not to be the one that breaks that news.
I think that happens frequently, to be fairly honest with you.
Does
Yeah.
happen.
Doesn't make it easier to,
Especially when
to
the manholes
reveal.
are in the middle of the road.
Did it backfill one of the bounds? Let me see. Section where there's no berm installed, grass strip unfinished, sediment washing on the street, that's right around the last house that he just built up there, I think.
Yeah, there's work that's taking place between 2 houses. I wrote down house numbers.
Yeah.
I don't frankly know exactly what took place, but there's no berm, it's not finished, and the street is kind of messy.
Yeah. And he's got a little swale
Yes, coming down from,
coming down, doesn't that go right across the driveway, or the sidewalk?
well, there isn't much of a sidewalk there
Yeah.
to cross, so.
Kind of stops, I think, and then it would
Right.
flow over.
Okay, interesting.
Well, it's not really draining into, in,
Well, it's not draining right now because it's not raining.
Yeah.
I've got a little bit of a question about what's
What's-
that coming from, what is that, the purpose of that? If it's draining into the street, that's appropriate, we want that water to come to the street.
yeah.
If it's draining into a sidewalk, we don't want that. So I wanna know what's going on with that.
Does it need a culvert under the sidewalk, or are you saying it can drain over the surface of the sidewalk?
Well, we don't want it to drain over the sidewalk.
Cause then ice and all that.
Yeah,
Ice.
there's all kinds of problems with that, you know.
So
I don't know exactly what's going on, I have a call in.
you gotta ask, yeah.
This isn't a lot compared to what we've seen in the past to overcome.
Well, it's not a particularly large subdivision.
No, but I'm used to seeing 99 or 80 or something like that.
But the trees died all over the place there, I
Yeah.
don't know
That
why,
sounds
there's
to
a
me-
lot of dead trees.
You think it's the water just over?
I think it might be dry, I don't know. I don't know.
It's starting to get to the point, sometimes I wonder about that part of the bylaw. You know,
Putting trees between sidewalks and roads have never been.
Maybe we require that they keep 30% of the trees in the property outside of what they're cutting for the houses.
The problem is we can't, maybe I'm wrong, we can't do anything inside of the building.
Oh, that's right.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the killer. And honestly, what happened over on, what's the name of the
Is that under the current regs, you can't do anything?
Yeah, we can't do anything on anybody's property, that's just, we
Just
can't.
be within the right of way.
Yeah, it has to be within the right of way.
Lenny Gangle's on the other side of the road
What's the
there.
name? I call it,
I can't remember
I call
the
it
name of
the two subdivisions that Lenny built.
Yeah.
They put
Richards.
trees, yeah, Richards Ave. They put trees in there and literally the roots brought
Yeah.
up the sidewalks, it was a
It
mess.
popped the sidewalks like you
Yeah.
wouldn't believe.
They're fast-growing trees. I
Yes.
think
Yeah,
it's
that was-
something to really take off.
That was a bad, well, it was shallow roots too.
Yeah.
So I just don't wanna see that ever again.
So anyway,
A lot of
couple of other
homeowners don't
places
like it
that,
too.
you know, the right of way hasn't been stabilized and needs to be loaned and seeded. You have a misplaced manhole cover.
Drain manhole on a sewer
says
manhole. Drain
drainage.
manhole cover on a sewer manhole.
Um,
Somebody would be in for a big surprise when they pop that, looking for a drain.
Hopefully they got an O2 sensor when they put that on there before they go in.
I love number 13. Grass strip disturbed by vehicle.
Who's the mailman, I can tell you right now.
Oh, yeah?
I'm guessing, it's right by a mailbox.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like they
okay.
just drove right up over the curb and
We don't have any stipulations, or is there any stipulations of the soil that they have to put in for lawns? Because using gravel for topsoil is not what I call
I know.
You're
appropriate.
saying he's not using the highest quality garden loan?
No.
No. No kidding, kidding.
He's
Yeah.
using probably grindings and everything else for crying out loud in there. Yeah.
He's not allowed to remove topsoil though, too, right? Isn't there earthworks?
Well,
No,
What was
it's-
usually,
It's bring in, we can bring in anything, but we can't, I don't
You
remember
can't
the law.
take it out, but you can bring in fill.
Yeah, that's kind of big anyway. So anyway,
usually he just
I guess
mixes it with
Norman will
other
ask
stuff
you,
and that's.
these
Well, he's got
16 that are
those
here,
Yeah.
because this is moving towards a street acceptance, do we wanna put a date, a mail back? You know, what I don't want to happen is 1 month before the town meeting, these all come in, you know how that is, Kevin.
Oh, yeah.
And I just don't want that to
I've
happen
gotten phone
again.
calls on the day of town meeting.
You got it.
We fixed this.
I really want these 16 to have a
Yeah, to
date, like,
prove the work was
you've got,
done.
and I think John came up with something, I think that we've got do we have a road acceptance?
It's in-
Would that apply for this, in this particular instance though?
Well, this is a brand new road, so it should,
We submitted it 3 days before
Right.
the policy was approved.
We did it right before that.
Well, then, I think the board should set our own policies, you got until August 30th to get these cleaned up. We want time for Kevin to review it, I mean, I'm just throwing a date out there,
And
please.
it's gonna be, that's not the end of these. There's gonna be things that, yeah, they're all fixed, and I'm gonna go out and say, no.
yeah.
Right.
You gotta.
There's gonna be iterations.
Exactly. There's-
So that's why I say, you know, you got till August 30th to get this cleaned up, so Kevin can do an inspection, you do an inspection
Yeah.
September, early September, and then we give you to the end of September to clean up the next list, and that still gives us October to have some,
There's
I
plenty of
call it-
time though for them to address
Yeah.
these issues. These
I
are,
like floating everything.
Except you don't wanna
Sometimes you
get
gotta
into
crash that
fall
schedule,
and
though.
planting trees and stuff like
Yeah,
that. That's
I
the
just,
problem.
I
the
think we
trees
need,
are a question though. How about how the board feels about trees, and that's something you may wanna think about.
I
Do you
personally,
wanna accept like 27 brand new trees recently installed in an area where the trees aren't,
living
for
in,
some reason, surviving?
yeah,
Well,
Which is
would you
a
be able to
problem
put that on the
given the issue with
developer?
stormwater runoff.
Make
Yeah.
them,
I don't know.
I
see
would-
them
Which
through
is
the
an
first
issue.
2
Yeah, for a
years?
season, yes, a season
Yeah.
or two, something
I
like that.
think,
Which you do wanna consider given the stormwater runoff issue.
Yeah. If they could survive, they would help towards it. Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean, if they're dying,
Could be the water that's killing them, too much water.
you might wanna resolve that because,
Before trees go in.
right,
Or maybe you ought to just take it out of there and let the homeowner plant a tree. If they
Well,
want it.
We've done in the past where, and I think it was on Bryce Lemon.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't, where we had the developer basically get us a list of what, if the homeowner wants a tree or not. And that had to be supplied to the planning board and put into the documents, but
but I mean, do we wanna make that optional, given that we know that there are water issues, stormwater issues? I mean, I would think the homeowner would want the tree if they know there are problems. I don't,
yeah.
Well, if,
a new homeowner wouldn't know that.
and I think getting them in the ground in the beginning is part of the battle, because everyone loves the old mature trees, but getting them to that point where they're 5-10 years in is often challenging. But that will help with the soil, that will help with the overall aesthetic of these subdivisions and all that kind of stuff.
Heat,
I guess it's tough to say, when you say the word tree, it doesn't say it's gotta be
These are saplings.
4
not
years
even
old.
trees.
Yeah, if you put a tree that will die in the ground,
what number is this?
you know, there's no,
Well, we can talk, I think it's possible to
16.
But a better
communicate
tree.
with Concom to see, cause there's keystone species in this state, like the oak, and different species of trees that will do very well here, that are natural, that are going to provide home to a host of different species and all sorts of animals. I think doing something like that could sort of counter some of the
Somebody help me
environmental
out.
impact.
Didn't we update our subdivision regs to put in, cause after Lenny's problem, I think we updated it.
There are some specifics
Yeah.
about trees.
Yeah.
Cause we tried to eliminate any ones with small root or
Yeah.
shallow roots.
I think
And
we
fast growers.
included a short list, and I think there is a size requirement according to caliper of the tree.
okay. Cause I would say, it's tough to say, put a tree in and it could be the cheapest tree you can find.
Oh, yeah.
Not saying it might not be the right species, but,
Could you do me a favor,
Something
run
that-
over and tell them the battery might be going down the tubes?
something that's mature,
Thank
you know,
you.
that may survive harsh winter, all that wind exposure, yada yada.
But I like what dudes would say, if we got a water problem, we're not gonna fix putting trees in just to die again. We gotta get the water
Well,
problem
then,
fixed.
why not bittersweet?
well, no, I'm saying that the trees can help to counter some of the,
Yeah, once they get
A little
growing.
Yeah.
bit,
But they-
they're not gonna make a huge difference.
It's gonna
but I mean,
take
I think
time.
that we should not, what I'm saying is, it's important though, is what I'm saying. We should not ignore it as if it's.
Oh, no,
No.
it's in our,
They have to do it as part of the subdivision cleanup for the road. Just a
So
question.
what does the subdivision regs say the tree has to be?
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know.
It gives a variety of trees, it doesn't say exactly what it has to be. It leaves it up to the developer,
On
but it
page
gives them.
40 of the subdivision rules, it does say something about trees.
I think it gives species if I remember.
There's a species
correctly.
list.
Yeah, I thought we put that in there because we tried to get rid of the fast movers that Lenny put in before.
I got a couple comments after, we figure out the tree thing too, just with the list. But I don't wanna interrupt the tree talk. Sorry.
Could be under landscape.
Okay, yeah,
There
there
it
is a
is.
list.
Yep.
The pages are wonky, so it says page 40, but
What is it, 44 of 92, is that what I'm reading? I knew we'd come up with something.
it does talk about the preservation of existing trees.
Which typically doesn't happen because they
Doesn't
clear
happen.
cut the whole lot.
Yeah,
Which is, I mean, it's confusing to me because the plan talks about things outside of the road, so I'm just confused about how is it that you can't enforce aspects of the plan that's stated in the regs. Like it's very confusing to me.
The trees, if I'm not mistaken, that we're talking about in the sidewalks are all in the right-of-way area.
In the right of way, right.
Which the town, the planning board has jurisdiction over. It's just
Right.
once you get outside the right-of-way, you're done.
Right, but I'm talking about, what trees do they refer to in the subdivision rules? Trees on the site, wherever possible, should be preserved.
It's a suggestion, there's no shall or,
Suggestion.
yeah. We can't tell them to do it, we just.
Should be preserved wherever possible.
There's Bryce Lemon. See, do you see any trees?
That's what he did.
Well, I mean, I'm just reading what it says.
Yeah.
Should
One
be
of the
preserved.
problems is if you have grading, if you're cutting,
Yeah.
you're cutting down trees because you gotta
You
lower
gotta-
the earth.
You gotta
If you're
regrade.
filling, you can't bury a tree, so reshaping the land for a subdivision kind of mandates trees being.
And that's what Bryce Lemon, that's what he did. That's what I just
In a
showed
big
a
way.
picture of him
Oh, in a big
when he cleared the whole freaking thing.
But the regs, I remember putting this, we suggested or wanted the builder to save as many trees as they could. But we can't tell them they can't cut those trees down on that piece of property. All we can do is suggest. That was, if I remember
In
right.
the open space, you can't touch
Yeah.
it also. All you can take out the good trees and leave the others.
And the counter
Cause he's looking
was,
for money.
the counter was,
Anyway here.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Moving
just
on.
had,
Way off.
had one comment too on the list.
What's that?
Unless you got one better. I know I've heard from you guys on the board, and hopefully maybe this is documented in the stages of this road being paved. I feel like I've heard you guys say that the berm on one side of Arrowhead, and how, you know, a skim coat of pavement has gone in and the berm is theoretically not,
It's high.
it's not on top of the roadway, it's, you know, cut in and not as high, and I'm not sure if you know about that
I
fact.
don't.
You know, I've heard you bring it up, if you're
Yeah.
more of a better source on it, I would be nervous if it is true. And maybe you would have caught it by, I mean, I drove up there, it seems tall, I'm not sure if it's,
Left-hand
2 inches
side,
too
and-
short.
And it was by the 3 driveways, and there was one spot there where the berm was a little low.
It seems low.
It seems.
Yeah.
And again, we never measured it.
yeah, and
But it was mentioned how he had done work underneath there and he had to, you know, put a base coat, and I think, it was
Yeah,
a little bit
we
higher.
had to do some extra paving
Yeah,
on some part of that, cause something didn't go in right the first time.
yeah. And that's where the berm was not correct.
I'm not familiar with that. This is on Arrowhead.
Arrowhead.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying when you're coming down, the about roughly 3 houses there where this problem is, it's the last house.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Make sure to see that.
yeah, cause if it could be in this list, hopefully it can get addressed if you feel it's inadequate,
Okay.
you know, and.
I mean, if I saw berm that I registered as being inadequate, I would have brought it up.
Yeah,
And there are times that berm isn't always exactly the perfect level.
yeah,
I am a guy who at one time required guys cut that out and fix it, and
Yeah.
I've come to regret having done that sometimes, because sometimes the remedy is worse than the problem.
yeah,
You know, we end up, you know, tearing something out and,
then it cracks over time because you
Yeah.
just made a repair to it.
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I've had that
it's-
happen to me.
it-
I'm a little, I wanna see something that's distinctly inadequate
yeah,
to cite it.
yeah, I've just heard about it, I just,
I'll go take a look.
yeah, if it's possibly can't hold back a certain amount of water, you know, and stuff like that, so.
I just think, Norm, that we should direct Delia to get a letter to Clea indicating that we wanna see the 16 comments back on them as finished. And so, Kevin could re-inspect. I'll leave it up to the board for a date, but I think sooner is better than later. Because, again, my previous time on the board, it was always last minute, and I am.
Yeah.
And to Tamika's point, if it was put in before the policy went into effect, it's gonna be the board dictating it now, not a policy. So, it's my opinion. I'll let you guys
I agree with you on that.
Come up with a date and make him stick to it.
Okay, do we have anything else for Kevin?
Good,
Right,
I
thank
think
you, thank you.
you've
good to see you.
I think it was a,
done a very good job of
All right, if
clarifying
we
things.
get him out of here in a minute, he can only charge us for half an hour.
Thank you very much for all the
thank
information.
you, and I
Yeah.
appreciate,
I think you helped out with our residents too.
good,
Yeah.
good, I hope so. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Oh, I was saying bye.
Kevin, before you go,
Yep.
Dee was saying she's got records, and it sounds to me like you might have more. Is it any thought process of doing some comparison for?
I wouldn't, I
Okay,
just reproduce them and pump them out.
okay, good enough.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Okay, back to our regular agenda items. Item 4, board reorganization.
I like it the way it is.
My only short comment would be if, and it doesn't matter if it applies or not, but, there's chance for discussion before any motions. I know
Mhm.
discussion occurs during motions, but if possible, just to get them out there, just to help with the conversation. I might consider saying that, I know Tim was vice chair. It would be interesting, and it's up to you, all of us, of course, but without a motion, it lets us talk about it before going forward and hearing from someone, but, if, Dick only has a year left on the board before he retires,
Less than a year.
less than a year to, potentially, nominate, Dick for vice chair, so he has, even though you've had the 30 years of time on the board, when you retire, you're vice chair when you retire. That would be my only comment. Not looking for it to do anything more, but more or less, if you have any comments.
As long as I got backup, that's all I care,
As long as you're-
because I'm gonna need backup.
Yeah, I wouldn't see why not. You wouldn't have backup?
No, I want backup.
Okay.
What the heck is going
And
on?
I mean, I don't know if it
No,
affects.
the ringing in my ear is terrible. Oh, it just buzzed.
That was that
I
thing
could
over there
say
that was
it,
ringing like
I
there
could
was
say it
no light.
louder, I guess. I could say it louder.
What is it? But they don't need it, they're all set.
No,
I don't know if you think that's a neat idea.
I'll
I'd like
take
to
it.
hear what anyone else says too.
That one's still recording. They were. Don't worry.
Yeah, they fixed the problem, so
Okay.
they're not worried about this, this is all set.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Anyone
And I don't
else?
wanna take away from Tim. I know,
Oh,
Tim, you were on the
fine.
board at
I'm
one point, vice chair. And I don't know that vice chair, if it would affect the bylaw subcommittee, cause of course,
No, bylaw subcommittee is gonna be okay.
yeah, okay, it'd be its own thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just a suggestion as a, just a going away present, I guess.
All right.
But I'd like to hear from everyone else.
Any other comments?
Nice present, sport.
Well, I just said the magic word. Going away.
You're not going away.
Any comment?
You wanna talk to my wife?
Hey, I got you to stay for another 2 years.
Yes, I know you
As
did.
far as I can go.
Yep.
That's as far
All
as I
right.
can go.
And Norm's chair.
Well, we haven't voted on any of this yet.
Yeah, I didn't wanna make a motion without, I think it kinda jumps ahead of finding out what everyone feels.
I'm good with that.
Well, then this is a little bit out of order for, I guess, how we usually do it, but why don't you make the motion of the nomination?
I'd like to, make a motion to nominate, Dick Williams to vice chair for the planning board.
And Norm Anderson is the chair.
Do you want me to do all
Yes.
three? I
go
figured
Norm.
to do one,
Go Norm.
Typically do,
We
yeah.
need one at a time.
You do one at a time?
the same
What?
person?
We should start at
Okay,
As I say,
okay.
we're doing a
No, I know
lot
what
of
you
order, but
Well, no, I mean, I don't mind nominating, cause I believe in Norm too, as chair. I think, he's got that, time available, that experience, and, he knows the files pretty good too, you know, so when you guys go in and dig, I think Norm's been very good at that.
It's been excellent.
So, I personally have no problem, and I think it's a good thing to nominate Norm Anderson for, chair of the planning.
I'll second that.
Just to clarify, are we combining it into one motion?
One motion.
That's why I'm,
I think
that's
we
why I'm
should-
confused.
We should do
I think we
individuals.
should do
I think they should be
separate.
separate.
he just mentioned only the chair.
Okay.
Okay, so, cause everyone said taking it out of order, so let's.
So Keith already made a motion to do vice chair, so rather than rescind his motion, why don't we continue with the vote for vice chair and then move on to
Okay.
chair, if you're amenable to that?
Yeah,
I'm fine.
Okay. Did we get a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on the vote for vice chair? No? All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
It's unanimous.
make a motion to accept Norm as chair.
Second.
Any discussion? Silence. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
aye,
And
I think we need to do a clerk. We've never done that before, but I think from the standpoint of the,
Yes, you have, Keith is your clerk.
oh, we did?
Yeah,
I apologize. I did not know that.
Keith,
Huh?
See, Norm's
Keith
got
has
the,
been your clerk.
Norm's got the same look I do. We had a clerk? Well,
Keith,
then
I recognize you as the clerk.
Oh, thank-
You did a
yeah.
wonderful
Then
job.
I
we work
would-
together.
Yes.
I'm behind on one meeting.
Oh, that's
there,
right,
but-
yeah. I would nominate then, Keith Tuttle as, planning board clerk.
Second.
any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes,
Okay.
well, thank you.
Alright.
Can't wait to type.
I don't know if you're are we moving on to another item? I just wanted to recognize the gentleman here with regards to 541 East County Road.
Let's get that out of the way.
Just, I don't know if you wanted to take that particular item up.
Sure.
The property encroachment in the road, number 8.
Oh, okay,
He's been sitting there patiently.
yeah. Okay, so, talking about the, this is talking about a, I'm thinking about a fence on a property line. We're constructing vehicular use. So, I don't know, we've already talked some about it.
You get my updated information?
Yes, I did, and I'll tell you one thing, I am so happy about it that I would turn I'm just trying to see here, I'm just, I don't know if I ought to or not. I was gonna turn this copy over to Selectmen.
I can give them a copy whenever they're ready.
Well, I would give it to them sooner than later.
Was offered that I
Because
should
it
come here
was
visit first.
Selectmen's discussion with town council, which is opposite of his council,
Which I'd have to say my lawyer is a land lawyer and an estate specialist, so.
yes. And so, because KP, oh, we have no control over that, no, you do. So that's why I wanted you to have a copy of this, so.
So you wanna submit that to the select board? Not me personally, but to the select board?
Just to show that, you know,
Can I just ask for clarification? I can see we have information, but just so that I understand what purview it's going to the select board under.
because KP said it wasn't in their purview, period. And Dave's lawyer said, yes, and Mass General Law and spoke, here it is. So KP Law, get your fingers out it. Okay, calm down.
So you're saying that KP Law looked into this and established that this is a state right of way? Is that what happened? I wasn't involved, I was not aware of that.
Just before you came.
I just wanted to, I didn't have this letter before the planning board packet was uploaded. But based on the records that I found with Mass DOT. It is a town accepted road.
It's a town accepted road.
Right,
It
so-
used to be a county road.
Right.
East County Road is the name of it. That's why it was a county road. And yes, the town, in year 2000, the, county gave up all their
It became a town road, not a state
town
road.
road.
So,
So,
I mean, based on the records that I was able to find, I mean, based on what I found, it does appear to be a town accepted road. I did speak with Chris at DPW. He has sent a letter to the owner of the fence. So we're just waiting to see what happens.
Is there a date given?
I
on
don't,
that letter?
unfortunately, there is no deadline here, which is a great question.
Do you know what Chris said in the letter?
Yeah,
Like,
I have a copy of the letter
it
right
needs to be
here.
out of the, my thought process was just, I deal with the city of Worcester that, that pole's in the right of way, that fence should be on the other side of that pole. Because the right of way is town controlled, so there shouldn't be any fence in the right of way. That's my opinion, but I don't know what Chris said.
Right, I don't know about the pole, I'm just speaking specifically to the fence.
Yep.
The pole is a good landmark to where the corner is, cause if you look on the plan, the corner post is about 3 feet behind that pole. So that puts them 17 feet onto the town right away.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
It's not just 3 feet, it's 17 feet.
17.
So now my only thought of, and I know you said before it's not in your jurisdiction, but I was required as a business to submit my business plan and my site plan and my sight lines. And for doing all that, then apparently I get no protection. I mean, I did my part. Alls I'm asking is for you to clarify with the building inspector or the highway agent that this needs to get done.
Yeah.
Oh, good, I like that letter, Dave. I see the 17 feet, so that,
Yeah,
which is basically,
give her that.
oh,
That's what.
So, yeah, a letter has been sent from DPW. I don't know if you want to follow up with Chris and CC me so I can keep the board informed on what's, occurring. But I just wanted to let you know, I got this letter after I uploaded the packet, so I wasn't able to add it, but
excellent.
But we don't have a date.
unfortunately, no, but I would maybe in a week or two, follow up with Chris to find out if there was any response. And then, because
Wasn't there a deadline? Why is in the back of my mind, I thought there was like a 31-day, if nothing happens in a period.
On the language that my lawyer put on it, he had 15 days for action by the
15.
town.
By the town.
But I don't know if that, I don't have to clarify whether that's how much time the town has to give them. But in light of this, I would hope that town council would clear that up and figure that out, because this mass general law and town bylaw cover this issue, so. And it only took them about 20 minutes to get back to me with that, so. So it didn't cost me too bad.
No.
Well, it looks like we're heading in a positive direction, as opposed, when you discussed it with me, there was no direction, and now there's a path forward, so that's good to hear.
I like that.
So there's some movement on this anyway.
Good.
Dave,
That's all I
anything
can
else?
ask for.
Okay, cool.
No. But it's, in our spare time, if we get some, but I still like to have a site walk at his place, because being a village industrial area, I would like to see what things could be possibly put. And I just want the rest of the board have it in the back of their mind, what's, how it visually, where things could go and And to me, for crying out loud, especially down in your neck of the woods, there's a lot of gravel there, so I'm thinking septic is not gonna be a problem. It says here in fine print. just as long as they stay away from Ware River, Zone A, watershed district. But,
Apparently that's further away now, so it's not a problem.
yeah,
I don't know how that works, but, yeah.
yeah, it's from
Now,
200 to 400 feet, so.
through the chair, just to add to, you were talking about changing or modifying your bylaws for development or whatever. What about fences? Why does the town of Rutland not have something in their language? Because it was pretty easy for me to look at all the surrounding towns. Holden was a little tough because their read is a little rough, but Paxton certainly had very clear language on covering fences and where it should and shouldn't be, and Rutland has nothing, which.
And I did give a copy of the town report where Harry Johnson was the
Fence viewer.
fence viewer, and there was somebody else there too, also.
I don't know, the topic has never come up as far as I know,
Yeah.
about fences.
Just did.
I think there's some fences that are covered under Mass General laws, though.
It's gotta be above 8 feet, I think. it
Yeah,
is.
certain number.
Something like that, yeah.
7 feet.
7 feet?
Yeah.
So I remember any 6-foot fence is
Yep, no permit required.
no permit required, and that's
No
the
matter
killer.
where it is too.
Apparently.
Well, it can't be in the right of way, I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
No, but like Paxton has,
I
it
see
has
what
to be
you mean,
12
yeah.
inches back from the property
Yes.
line.
You got setbacks.
And you typically have to submit it with a plot plan
Yeah.
so that everybody knows, so you don't have neighborly disputes about where the fence went.
Yeah.
That should all be handled before, not after.
And I think that's something that,
Bylaw subcommittee can work
Yeah, I was
on,
gonna say something.
man,
Yes.
I'm not sure I want to,
well, Paxton, if they got it, maybe we can look at it and
Here,
just
it's right
tweak
here,
it.
I can give you a
Trust me.
copy, it's real easy.
no, that was the one thing that Maryland taught me, borrowing from other communities' bylaws is not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing, but
It gives you a good,
careful, it can be a dangerous thing.
yeah, well, exactly, but you gotta take all of them and use the best from each to come up with a bylaw, and it's gotta suit the town too.
Okay, so I guess we're moving on that, we have to wait and
Alright.
see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, next item, back to number 5, Lindsay Lane road taking. You have a copy, they are looking for road acceptance of, that's not another part of Rutland Estates.
And,
It's,
and I'm saying, before we get involved with that, here's what I was talking to you about, with the circle with the X in it. And they're up here talking about the, putting an easement across. But on their thing, and it's,
I don't know if I do this, I figured rotate, that's.
just hold still for a second. It's a triangle piece and it says open space on it right there, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And that's what, there is no easements to it, it being open, and being open space. It means that the people in that community are supposed to have rights to go to it. So how do they get to it if they don't have an easement to get on it? And we did discuss this way back over on the other side here.
I don't have anything,
Oh,
Nope.
wait a minute,
right there,
no,
there's a, that's a right of way, that's not an easement. There's the open, oh, there it is, right there, there's the access to the open space between the two pieces of property right there.
no,
Yeah, that's let me zoom it up for you. There's access, there's the open space, there's the access from the road. It's not on either person's property. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah.
Something's a little off in your map.
it says open space right there.
I must not have the same map. Oh, that's,
That's that, I believe, wait a minute, no, it's down the other end.
oh, this one,
Uh,
here, let me do this. Where's the open space? Right there, so that's
Is
not the
that
same
one?
drawing that I've got.
Isn't that strange? How could that happen? Okay, so I would say offhand, that's this one right here. It's not showing beyond it.
That's not good. Got properties that don't match up. Is this, oh, this is Lemon Circle. I apologize, no, that's Lemon
Same
Circle.
one, it's the same one, they changed the name.
Why does this say first plan? Is there a second plan I'm missing? And it says second plan, but it only has one piece of
Yeah.
property on it, so. Am I in left field playing right?
I went online in town and,
Well, I'm struggling, and we got before the planning board, what's what I'm looking for, road acceptance that doesn't match what.
it doesn't. They're looking for easement acceptance, I thought.
Well, I mean, just also in addition to whatever issue you identified, I just wanna make it clear that the documents that were submitted are do not meet the criteria for street acceptance based on the current policy that's in place. So I've contacted Clee to let him know that, so currently this packet here is not actionable.
Great, so
And to add to Delia's, this has not gone before the select board, which is the first step in the
they gotta
process.
refer to the planning board.
Correct, because it's an incomplete packet. So although it's on the agenda, there's no action to take right
Stamp,
now.
move on.
Well,
That's my opinion.
how do we get an easement for open space?
Which plan is that that
I'm
you
looking
have
at
a
this
copy?
one.
Where did this come from?
That came off the Mass
a
GIS system,
Yeah,
the one that we have access to on town
and
website.
on town
Is this
website.
is this? I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
What my frustration data is, if this is what, cause this is what the assessor uses. If this is different than what the assessor's using, I'm struggling right now. Cause,
Yeah, but I'm saying, see, the part there, they don't have that line in there on that.
yeah, well, the properties are completely different. Because, oh no, maybe not, I apologize, with,
What's that say
oh, see, we don't see the sheet 10
there?
that'll show, sheet 10 actually does this. So maybe it's not different, but. You're right, Dick, I don't see how you get access to this piece of property unless this is the easement.
No, it's a roadway in to the house up in here.
Oh, you can't,
That's Julian, you know, a little bit.
this is my opinion, Norm. Put this whole thing off until we get the actual documentation and get it referred to, cause we're sort of,
Well, I mean, this is,
Well,
wouldn't that
still,
be a site plan?
it's still something just a drop in Blair's, hey, how you gonna get to it? Get us an easement to get to it. You'll have to go between two houses across from whatever this short cul-de-sac is.
well, maybe that's a letter that we send them, is that while you're working on your updated package, cause you please provide us the easement to the open space. Or maybe, I shouldn't say easement, show us how we get to the open space, let him do the work.
Yeah. From the people that, because it's the people there that own it.
Yeah, cause property 13 just can't go meandering through somebody else's property to get to it. That's my opinion, I'll let the board say.
Alright, so anyway, that's
I
something
might-
I found.
I might give him a letter,
Yeah. Sounds right.
but I like
You
Delia's.
you want that? You can have it.
I like Delia's suggestion, there's no actionable item on this, we just pass it on.
Get it fixed,
Okay,
please.
next item, payment to town on lots in Bear Hill 2.
I gotta ask you about that.
Hmm.
How is that going to the general fund or is it
No.
going,
It's an agricultural fund.
that there's an account set up for, I remember that?
The town has already put $500 in, and I think it was like about 3 years ago that it first started. And there is, I can't remember how many dollar bills is in that account right now.
And there's 10 houses
7,000 or something like that in that account.
and there's 10 houses that have occupancy permits in Brintnal Estates.
I counted
That-
15
Well, I'm talking, they gotta have occupancy permits if I remember.
occupancy, okay, not
If I could clarify, it's not occupancy permits, it's when the lots are sold.
sold.
There have been 17 building permits pulled in Brintnal. When we
Oh.
sent the letter requesting that, Clee said that there were only 10 lots that he had sold. He only paid us for 9.
Okay.
None of that math adds up.
Yeah,
Sounds about right.
I'm confused because if the lot's sold, and there's 17 lots that are sold that have building permits,
There were,
I'm confused of how
Well, they
that
have building,
equals-
building permits, apparently he has't sold them yet, though. I was under the understanding that he doesn't build until he sells.
That's
there
what
were
my
10, there were
thought
10
process was
houses
too.
built on that in Brintnal. 10 houses built.
Yeah.
There were 17 houses and foundations. And usually he doesn't put a foundation in unless he's sold.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's true, but, you know, what I'm just curious is why, what was his discrepancy between the 10 and 9?
He
Well,
didn't say,
originally,
they
he
just
said
dropped off
they-
a check that totaled for 9 lots.
Remember the first communication, he said something about 9 lots.
He said 10. In his email to us, he said, I sold 10 lots, but the check that was dropped off was for 9.
Well, I'm just thinking, I can remember way back it said 9. I mean, that was some time ago when I first started.
Yeah, this was only a couple weeks ago though,
Yeah.
that he told us it was 10.
Well, I'm the guy on the bicycle that says you owe me $250. Give me my $250. I want the money.
Anyway, I just find it kind of interesting, that, you know, you brought up the Brintnal Estates payments and so forth. But apparently nobody realized that we had the same condition on Bear Hill too.
Really?
Yes, and I'd have to thank Melissa Danza, in her little letter requesting us
Awesome.
to take some action. She noted in there that there was the condition. I looked it up and yes, there it
So
is.
we need to send a letter to him
We
to,
have,
oh, thank you, because those houses are sold.
yes.
We know how to make money for the town.
It's making it for the next.
do it for 8,
And,
9.
and not only that, interest goes there. And
Yeah, I get
it
that.
doesn't go to general fund, there's interest that adds to that account.
And anyway, so
I still think we need to add another 0 to that next time we do the special conditions.
2,500.
250
The
bucks
thing
is,
I'm 99% sure we did not do it on Noble Hill.
It was,
didn't.
Noble Hill was,
The only thing I remember Noble Hill is the rec field. And to me, for crying out loud, the way it was worded was not right. And I have to go back and I hope I still have the minutes. Because that's not the way that I had expressed it.
Noble Hill's gonna have a lot of reports
Well,
because
yes,
Yes.
there is so many sections to Noble Hill.
I don't think
And
we've been getting
henceforth-
reports though. Have we had monthly reports from these?
No, not that, because that hasn't started.
Well, I shouldn't say reports,
Any of them.
he can't, if I remember Noble Hill's special permits, he can't move forward with the road until the planning board gives him authorization for the next section. If I remember how those special, and again, I have to look at them, I don't remember off the top of my head, but
Well,
you could do like 150 feet, and then once that is stabilized,
you can do the first.
yeah, 150 feet, and then when that's stabilized, you come to the planning board and you're authorized to do the next, I thought it was.
Cause we were talking about
You-
doing that in reverse next time. so
originally,
that they have to
yes, but not. What have I brought up with the select board? How many times? And the planning board, and I think it was the planning board that said, well, why don't we get the next time, somebody comes in with a subdivision or something like that, we'll have them do the Weston and Sampson study on the sewer line. Is it up to capacity? And nothing has been done about it, and I'm waiting, because so help me, you get any more houses tapped into that sewer. And if the Heights has a lot more houses going in up there,
144.
and
I think there was a study done. I don't know if you have a copy of it, but I think I go back a couple of years ago.
Joe did it,
Joe Buckley.
and it said it was full, or near full at that time,
144 going in where?
into the sewer line.
140 not houses, but 144 residences because they're duplexes.
Yeah.
But there'll be 70,
It's
70 or
It's 60,000
Yeah.
gallons set aside each day for septic.
I thought the greater conversation was, is the pipe size is not the same throughout any part of town, so based on
This is,
the entry point of wherever this land is, if that pipe can't
well, the
handle,
pipe was enlarged,
Capacity.
yeah, that was enlarged some years ago.
I mean, depending on which and where these.
This is at DCR's station where they measure the flow. This is
Is it in town or is it in Holden?
Hilltop, near Hilltop,
Okay,
or heading over towards Holden. You know,
Yeah.
I can't, all of a sudden can't remember Sandstrom's old
well,
place
it's
or,
their flow, where they have the
Lilac
flow
Hedge.
meter.
flow meter is in there, and that's how they tax the town, is the flow that goes through there,
Yeah,
which was off, and the
Wasn't
state had to,
calibrated.
yeah, it wasn't calibrated right, and the state had to pay back.
there was one guy that they had to find that still could calibrate that meter from 45 years ago.
Yeah. So anyways, you know, I know the town said that next time Blair wanted something big, that they were gonna ask him to pay for that.
It's gonna be a tough one.
And that is gonna be a very tough one, because I can see Blair right now, oh no, I've got the legal rights to tap into that sewer. Because that was filed a long time ago,
That'll be a Chris Kowalski and select board
yeah.
fight.
But I'm saying, you know, tomorrow that sewer line could burst, and then what the heck are you gonna do? This town hasn't got any,
Well,
A
Keith, to
dollar.
your point, it's not so much the different sizes, it's the material that was used. Cast iron doesn't last forever.
and, and what is just below it?
Water,
Pine Hill Reservoir,
so
City of Worcester's reservoir.
polluted if it breaks.
Okay,
All right, meanwhile,
any other public comment? Last item.
move to adjourn.
Not yet.
What?
I wanna suggest that I would like to go back and take over the bylaw subcommittee as the chairman, and to Gene's point, get this thing rolling. It's been
That yours or mine?
dead in the water for 3 months. And I think we need to, we just heard of 3 topics or 2 topics that need to be handled. So I guess I'm asking through the chair who was doing the appointment to step up and take care of that and get it rolling again.
I make a motion that Tim now will step up and start doing it.
Yep.
Do I hear a second?
For the record, yeah.
Well, we can't reorganize right now because the bylaw subcommittee meeting hasn't been posted or opened.
No, all I want,
Yeah.
we gotta do it at that
That whole thing
meeting.
is a decision of the bylaw committee.
Oh, yeah, you're right. All right, sorry. I just wanna get this thing rolling, cause there's a lot of hot topics that we need to get to.
Oh, yes. I am thinking, considering, you know, the time we're spending like on our regular meetings, we may need extra meetings.
And then there's 2 other topics that I wanted to bring up that wasn't on this but need to be addressed. One is CMRPC, needs a rep, and then the charter committee needs a rep. That needs to get done. It hasn't been done, so I'm just throwing it out there for the board. Somebody's gotta step up and take care of those 2. CMRPC is probably not important. Charter committee's on a hold for at least, I think, a month or so to make it there.
No, they just posted an agenda.
Yep, they're meeting on Thursday and then I think they're taking a break after that for a while.
Alright, they're probably gonna talk about the results from the,
From the Q&A session.
yeah, but that needs to be, and maybe that can be held off until fall. It really needs to be handled. It's like a,
It's a whole nother subject.
Charter committee?
No. 2 things. Master plan, where the hell is it?
Oh, God.
Number 2, where is the road, map, the road stuff? Whatever happened to it?
Oh, that's right, we're supposed to get an official road map.
Yeah, and we went through it and said what we thought are, you know, that they had to relook at. Haven't heard a peep about either one of
All
them.
that just disappeared.
I have a couple updates if I may. So there was additional grant funding that was awarded to the town to be able to continue work on the open space and recreation plan, which is the final piece that's needed to complete the master plan. So Melissa Dan's on the open space committee, is actively working with CMRPC. I've been looped in on those emails. And as far as the street map, I did send those comments back to CMRPC quite some time ago. And I did send a follow-up email and I didn't get a reply. So I have been attempting to connect with them, but I'm not hearing back from them, unfortunately.
All the more reason go to Berkshire Regional Planning.
Well,
Thought we donated extra hours too.
We
You
did.
you
Okay.
did, so that they would be able to address the comments that were made by the board and the
I
town
got
clerk.
Janet's cell phone
And
number.
unfortunately, once I submitted them, even after I followed up, I never heard back from them. So I'll make a note to myself to follow up again tomorrow.
Have they been paid? We don't, it doesn't come through our budget
It's
anymore.
it's LPA hours, so it's not like they don't invoice us for money.
You're
But
talking about the year,
It's like in
yearly
kind.
payment.
the yearly payment,
Oh, no, we've not yet received the annual assessment for FY '26. Usually that comes sometime soon.
wow, yes, because it was,
They might be backlogged.
it was done some time ago.
Well, before I left, Janet sent me, cause I gave it to John, the updated cost for this year for fiscal year 2026.
But it has to be an actual invoice, and that likely wasn't
no,
an
no.
invoice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I gave him the number to put into the budget, so when it came to the invoice, it would be a zero, in and out basically, here's the money.
Sure.
But, so they haven't invoiced
No,
us.
they haven't invoiced us yet, yeah.
Wow. That's not good.
I just wanted to,
Okay.
Norm, to somebody think about CMRPC, it's a good opportunity, and I think, Gene, you're the rep for the select board now?
Yeah.
So we need one for the planning board. So,
One quick thing to bring before you guys. I believe, as we have spoken extensively about Mr. Blair so far, he's putting in some lots on Brintnal. Right past the entrance to the development as you're heading towards Pommogusset on the right-hand side. And it is my understanding that the following activities within the boundaries of the right-of-way shall be require written approval of the planning board: painting, tearing down, or destruction of stone walls. And he has completely obliterated that stone wall with a skidder, pushed it over with the bulldozer part of it, and completely dismantled it.
it's a
So,
scenic road.
it is a scenic road, and I'm wondering what we are prepared to do about it.
Did he not, isn't that part of,
Have we been notified of that, of his intent to destroy,
Yes.
take that apart?
I thought
yeah,
it's the two lots across from you.
But they're
No, it's further,
it's further
further
down.
towards the development,
Yeah, it's
towards the
A&R
entrance of
lots, though.
Bear Hill.
They're on-
Doesn't, but it's still a scenic town
Oh,
road.
no,
and-
no, no, I think, I thought,
but I think those lots are part of Hilltop.
Yeah.
You're talking at the bend? I'm sorry to not know
So
exactly.
as you're coming from Brintnal and you just pass the entrance to the development on the right-hand side,
Which development, the one that hasn't been made or
Bear,
Grizzly?
yeah, Grizzly, Bear Farm on your left-hand side there as you're coming from Campbell down Brintnal towards Pommogusset.
so
After you get past the entrance to Bear Hill on your left there.
Brintnell Estates, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, before you get to the top of the hill for Brintnal Estates, there's two lots that he's cut in on the right where he's clear cut everything and destroyed the wall. I have pictures. I don't think he likes that I go and take pictures of his sites near my
That,
house.
I
but-
thought that it was all part of it. It's just not, I'm thinking like about 3-4 months ago,
What?
about those two lots.
Like I say, I believe those lots are part of Hilltop Estates,
They're A&Rs and
But,
Hilltop Estates.
yeah,
which does not make sense to me right now. It does not.
They're that far away.
no, it was attached, no, well, I don't know about attached, but they were part of the hilltop.
They're gonna have to be tied into that sewer, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
oh, yeah.
Cause they're in the wetlands essentially. Pictures of that too.
But
I've gotta go back
Yeah.
and take a good look at the full-size
Yeah.
Hilltop Estates plan.
I'm just wondering if we ever actually received any notice that he was gonna go ahead and do that. So then,
No.
do we have any recourse, or are we still hands tied? Just we could write another, I mean, while we're at it,
Well.
might as well
is
bust
that-
out the college rule.
no,
Or is that DPW?
that's a planning board's authority isn't it authority for scenic
It's
roads?
up on scenic roads.
Scenic road,
and
but
It's a general bylaw.
We can require him to replace, well, let's put it this way. He is, I believe, allowed to,
You have to get a driveway cut from
So
Chris, right?
he's allowed to do emergency work, repair of the stone wall using natural stones and of similar appearance to the original wall, does not require approval hereunder, which is not what he did.
No.
At all.
But he could rebuild the whole wall when he's done with the project.
True, but
Except
he
for the
didn't let
driveway.
us know is lack of respect.
if I'm not mistaken, he is required to get approval from the planning board to remove a portion for a driveway,
Correct.
okay?
Tearing it all down is a different story.
Anything more than
Making it
that, simply
disappear.
we can require him to, rebuild it.
But we can't actually like punish him.
We don't have any capacity to fine anyone.
No.
The only thing
Gotta-
that's tough is he's typically doesn't, hopefully those conditions, or just use, you know, if it's scenic or historical, you know, once those rocks are gone, you know, and say he just puts up stuff you buy at a,
No,
No.
you have to get to a stonemason and basically replicate that scenic road. You just can't go to Home Depot and get
Well,
rock.
But
Well,
if you're trying to technically preserve it, you have to use the same rocks, or at least from the same era that
you would
whole.
have to
yeah.
collect them and
Get real
pile
into
them and just,
I'll tell you, my big problem right now is up at your end of Brintnal Drive on the opposite side of the street. There's, I don't know what, four new houses with it up there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's stone walls all along there.
Gone.
And I'm sure they must have removed the stone walls to do that. And I am certain nothing came before the planning board.
Cause they were A&R lots by Elbag.
Yeah.
They weren't subdivisions.
Yeah, I've noticed that, yeah, they would have had to do something and, yeah, it's,
I think the board needs to get a letter to Mr. Blair indicating that yes, if they're A&Rs, they're A&Rs, but please provide the board with your driveway cut permit for Chris to remove a section, and anything beyond that has to be that's what I'm looking for, rebuilt to its original state.
Restored.
preserved.
Yeah, something to that effect. I would get it in writing and document it and get it to him.
I'd like preserved rather than restored.
I think the language is in the scenic road bylaw.
It probably is.
I just, I wanna
I think
get
that's what I
that,
was reading.
I wanna get that documented
Exactly.
and to him.
But I don't like the rocks that he put in there and that easement.
No,
the grizzly, well, that's what I'm saying.
And to me, that's gotta be done and done proper.
Yeah, the rocks in the easement don't
Give you a
look
lot
at
of
all
pasture, right?
like the rest of the road.
You're loading it up.
You can buy those rocks for,
Well, he's got rocks all
He's
over the
got-
place.
he's got plenty of, yeah,
Yes,
you're right, you're right.
he can get
That's where
enough
they
to
come
build
from.
a good-sized stone wall.
And I think in that letter too, I would put as a paragraph below that and maybe in bold highlighted, whatever, from now on, for anything in that area with Hilltop Estates, if there's gonna be any scenic road, no appreciate, we require to be notified. That's my opinion. That's what I think should be in that letter as a sub-paragraph. Just so we're on record saying, listen, it happened once, we get it, but it's not happening again. Anyhow, that's what I think. I don't know what the rest of the board does.
I agree with you on that. And with
think you know where I
Alex's,
stand.
and with Alex's photos and documentation.
Yeah, I can send that
If
along.
necessary, or just somehow If it-
God, I could have sworn we had already discussed that. It might have been the other lot, so. Wasn't there 2 lots across from your driveway or something like that?
Down that way, yeah, there's lots down there.
That retaining pond that's at the bottom of that hill too leaks right into the wetlands. You can see the path the water takes out of the retention pond into the wetlands if you go take a look. You can see it from your car. It's not even shoddy workmanship. It's a half-ass attempt.
In Brintnal Estates?
From where they did the work on the sewer line down Brintnal, where they extended it up to Brintnal Estates, then they went down the other side of the hill towards Norm's house.
Yeah.
And they built a little retention pond at the bottom. There's
I
nothing
haven't seen
around the retention pond preventing any kids that this town now has proliferated riding around on electric bikes. There's no way to protect them from going in there, and all that water just goes right into the wetlands.
I can't.
Take a look, I'll buy the coffees.
I'm confused, I didn't think detention pond,
Yeah, there was,
some was,
I thought there were 2 detention ponds on on Hilltop.
all the detention ponds were on Hilltop Estates, they weren't,
Got a discharge.
they weren't outside of it now.
Yes, well, I classify them
I'm
somewhat
confused.
outside.
I gotta go look, I haven't been up that road in a while.
That whole site has just been sitting there for the last like 4 months.
What you're talking about, I don't think would be classified as a detention pond
Okay.
in any way.
Okay.
Collection pond or.
It's just, there's some crushed rock dug at the end of that sewer line extension.
Oh, is that what they put in
That's correct.
to mitigate the flow of water on the side of the road from,
Yeah, that's where the water flowed before.
okay, but it didn't have anything stopping it, the crushed rock at least breaks up its velocity.
Sort of.
Okay.
That big rain we had moved a lot of that crushed rock right down the hill.
Oh, God. So what I said about Michelonis is just the same thing except in a different place?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
anyhow,
I'm
out of steam.
Yeah.
just a suggestion. You have a copy of our road acceptance policy. Read it over very, very carefully. And at a future meeting, come back and tell me if you can understand what half of these requirements really amount to. Because in looking at an awful lot of this stuff, I don't have a hint. And it really kind of blew my mind when I actually sat down. And, this kind of came because of Delia saying, the submission was incomplete for this road acceptance, and
That wasn't this,
That was
wasn't it
just,
last month, last meeting, or was it?
that was before the election. We
This was
adopted
at the
this.
end
yeah.
of March, so
The end of
John
March.
drafted
Yeah.
it, the planning board reviewed it and approved it, and then it went to the select board for adoption, so the
John
planning
did
board,
this, John
yeah,
put this together.
you guys did this one.
Anyway,
Okay, I'll go back through my records and,
read it over very carefully.
yeah,
And if you can make complete sense of every one of these requirements and understand what it really is, I'd like to know,
okay,
because there's some of the stuff in there that,
I'll have to look at,
among other things, it seems as though a lot of the stuff is something that would have had to have been submitted on the application for the subdivision. And not necessarily for road acceptance. Anyway,
But for what it's worth, that does not apply to Arrowhead.
it does not,
Correct.
yes.
It would apply to Lemon Circle, right?
Yeah.
It does, so that was my one.
Which there is now Lindsay Lane.
yes.
Yes,
Okay,
correct,
yeah.
yeah.
Is there any other business to come before the board?
I guess I was gonna ask real quick, without interrupting anybody, just the bylaw subcommittee, is it, since Tim's on the board still, did it technically, is it still the same board and Tim just has to
It's gotta
kick out
reorg.
some emails, or it's gotta, how does it get started, I guess, doesn't?
Just have, Delia or Tamika just send out, set a meeting up.
Mhm.
Okay. And then, once we nominate people.
I think honestly, if it was me, the next, planning board meeting, I'd have it dual with the bylaw subcommittee, get it set
That would
up,
be an easy way to do it, yes.
get it set up, and then go off and have the next meeting separate to start working on the, God, there's a lot to work on, 68, there's
Site review.
site review, there's the, fence question, there's, open space modifications that are, out there, so there's 4 or 5 things that need to be done. And then I brought up, and again, this will be, can talk about later, potential modifications to R40 and R60 zones, things like that are all discussion points that have to be talked about. There's a whole plethora.
Oh, there is.
And it's gotta be prioritized and then attacked, cause there's no way one committee's gonna get everything done for spring. Gotta prioritize what's needed and what needs to go first.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, no. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I already made it some time ago, but
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
There you go. Any discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
21.
All right, this has nothing